Chapter 633. Although Du Jialua was extremely strong, he was only a 12-year-old mortal. He carried his adoptive mother, Madame Du, on his back, and his little sister, a silver fox, in front of him. Relying on his previous tenacity, he finally could not walk any further after walking 7 or 8 kilometers in one go. He had no choice but to gently put his mother and little sister down to rest. Although the little silver fox was still unable to move, she was still conscious. After Du Jialua put her down, she stared at the unconscious Madame Du and cried. Du Jialua softly called out "Mother" twice. However, Madame Du did not seem to hear him. Her brows were tightly furrowed in her unconscious state. It was obvious that she had suffered great pain before she fainted. Du Jialua knew that his family was currently in a dangerous situation. Thus, after resting for a while, he once again carried Madame Du and the little fox on his back and rushed back to the surplus river. However, Du Jialua had just stood up when he froze. He did not know when, but a middle-aged man who looked somewhat similar to Kai Yun, who had died in Madame Du's hands, was standing not too far away from him. He was looking at the unconscious Madame Du with a contemplative expression. He saw Du Jialua frantically stand in front of Madame Du and the little fox, using his body to protect them. Only then did he see that there was a small mouse lying at the middle-aged man's feet. Its little eyes were darting around. The middle-aged cultivator's expression was as calm as an ancient well. He reached out and picked up a torn golden talisman. "Who gave this talisman to you?" Du Jialua immediately understood that the person in front of him was a cultivator from the Surplus River sect. Furthermore, he looked like an immortal of a higher rank than the cultivators who had chased after him earlier. However, the immortal who had given him this talisman was undoubtedly his savior. Thus, he stiffened his neck and said, "I picked it up." A trace of malice flashed across the middle-aged cultivator's eyes. He said coldly, "Kid, do you think that the old man does not know just because you are not telling me? Let me ask you, was this talisman given to you by the 2 cultivators who came to Celestial Mountain's Lone Peak a few days ago?" Du Jialua did not know how the person in front of him could be sure that this talisman treasure was given to him by Lu Ping that day, but he knew that once he admitted it, it would definitely bring trouble to the 2 immortals who gave him 2 spirit stones and a talisman treasure to save his life. The immortals of the He immortal sect were all people with boundless dermic powers. The immortal in front of him looked very old and was definitely more powerful than the 2 young immortals from the other 2 days. If he admitted it, he would definitely bring trouble to those 2 kind-hearted immortals. Du Jialua knew that he couldn't escape today, so he said resolutely, "No." The middle-aged cultivator in front of him was Master Kai of the Abundant River sect. He was also the 3rd uncle of the cultivator Kai Yun, who had died in the hands of the Du clan. He was the person who had tried to spy on Lu Ping and Debao on the Lone Peak of the Heavenly Mountain. Although Du Jialua had changed directions and walked 7 to 8 kilometers in one go, Master Kai easily determined the direction that Du Jialua had escaped in with the rat demon under his feet and chased after him. Although Du Jialua tried his best to deny it, the middle-aged cultivator was very experienced and could not be compared to a 12 or 13-year-old mortal youth. At that moment, he was almost certain that this strange talisman treasure had definitely come from the 2 mysterious young cultivators from the other day. The reason why Master Kai asked about the origin of this talisman treasure was not only because it could be activated by a mortal, but also because he suspected the identity of the 2 young cultivators. To be able to casually give such a strange talisman treasure to a mortal and possess strength that was not inferior to his at such a young age. These 2 young cultivators were very similar to the elite disciples of famous sects who were out traveling. What Master Kai was worried about now was whether the 2 cultivators had already seen through the uniqueness of this young man. If they had seen through it and left such a powerful talisman treasure for him to protect himself, then if the Abundant River sect took this young man away, they would inevitably offend these 2 young cultivators who were most likely from famous sects in the Central Plains. These cultivators were used to being arrogant and had always been troublemakers in the Central Plains. Once these 2 cultivators got involved in this matter with the Abundant River sect and drew out the powers of the sects behind them, then a small force like the Abundant River sect would not be able to go up against them. However, if they let this young man go just like that, then the medicinal power of this young man's bloodline that he had used to strengthen his body would probably fall into the hands of others. Master Kai thought about how his sex Laozu had already reached the peak of the early Dharma stage. If he could use this young man's bloodline to refine a human elixir, then his sex Laozu would have a high chance of advancing to the mid-Dharma stage. At that time, the Abundant River sect would be able to suppress the Yingshan sect and the Daoyu sect and become the strongest sect in this mountain range. Master Kai's status in the sect would also rise. At that time, if he had the support of his sex Laozu, his level of practice might even increase to the next level. It would not be impossible for him to have a chance to enter the Dharma stage in the future. At this thought, Master Kai could not help but feel his blood boil. So what if the disciples of famous sects saw through this young man's secret? As long as he did it without anyone knowing, what could they do to the Abundant River sect? Once his sex Laozu passed the early Dharma stage and became a mid-Dharma Laozu, even those famous sects would not make things difficult for the Abundant River sect over such a small matter. The strange talisman was immediately thrown to the back of Master Kai's mind. Looking at the Du clan and the little fox demon lying behind him, Master Kai reached out and grabbed them. Du Jialua felt his body tighten as he was lifted into the air. Then, he reached out and released 2 sparks that landed on the Du clan and the little fox demon. Seeing that the Du clan and the little fox demon were about to be killed by these 2 sparks, Du Jialua's eyes widened. He opened his mouth to scream but found that his throat had been sealed and he could not make a sound. However, just as the 2 sparks were about to land on the Du clan and the little fox demon, 2 splashes of water suddenly appeared in front of them, blocking the path of the sparks. Tsk tisk. The sparks and the splashes of water met and instantly produced a puff of white smoke. However, the quality of the 2 splashes of water was obviously not a match for the sparks and was about to be roasted dry. At this moment, a cold wind blew and the 2 splashes of water suddenly froze, turning them into 2 pieces of crystal-clear ice. They finally came to a stalemate with the 2 sparks. Who is it that wants to go against the Abundant River sect? Master Kai's expression changed, and he immediately shouted. At the same time, he used his divine consciousness to scan the surroundings but did not discover anything. This made Master Kai, who had been trying his best to maintain his composure, feel his heart sink. Hee, sister, look, there's a little fox and a little mouse here. They're so cute. Master Kai looked over and saw a beautiful little girl about 10 years old suddenly appear not far behind the Du clan. Master Kai's heart froze. A demon? Only when a demon reached the core forging stage and took human form could they still look like a child. This was because the lifespan of demon cultivators was naturally longer than that of human cultivators. They often cultivated for tens or hundreds of years, but compared to their long lifespans, they were still in their childhood. However, what Grandmaster Kai did not notice was that when the little girl appeared, the little fox demon lying next to Madame Du shrunk back unnoticeably. Meanwhile, the little white mouse at his feet lay on the ground and trembled. A cold wind blew from behind Master Kai. Master Kai cursed inwardly and quickly dodged to the side. At the same time, a large bronze cauldron floated out of his chest. Dang! Dang! Grandmaster Kai couldn't help but take 2 steps back. When he turned around, he saw a boy around the age of 10 wearing strange stone armor. He held a halberd that was twice his height. The sneak attack just now was done by this boy with the halberd in his hands. But before Master Kai could prepare, a whip shadow took advantage of the space Master Kai was dodging and instantly cut into Master Kai's capture god art, freeing Du Jialua from midair. There's another person? This time, Master Kai no longer cared about the mortal boy that Laozu thought highly of. He immediately fled several tens of feet away. When he saw that the 3 did not take advantage of the opportunity to attack him, he turned around and looked at the 3rd core forging stage demon cultivator who had just rescued Du Jialua. She was still a little girl, but different from the naive little girl from before. This little girl had more of an adult's aura. Although the 3 demon cultivators were only at the 3rd layer of the core forging stage, Master Kai did not underestimate them at all. Instead, he was very wary of them. It was not only because of the strength that the 3 of them had displayed just now, but also because Master Kai could not see through the 3 demon cultivators at all. Master Kai looked at the little fox demon and Du Shur on the ground and said in a low voice, I wonder which demon king you three belong to? I am Overflowing River Sect's alchemist Kai Jinfeng. The three children were samling. When Lu Hai heard Kai Jinfeng's words, he couldn't help but sneer. What is the Overflowing River Sect? And who are you, Kai Jinfeng? What's so great about you? Kai Jinfeng's face flashed with anger, but he immediately restrained himself and said, I am indeed not that great. However, my martial uncle is Changhe Laozu. I believe the Demon King that the three of you serve knows about this. Lu Ling giggled and was about to say something, but she was interrupted by Lu Bai. She said, Ling can't you tell that Alchemist Kai is stalling for time? The cultivators from the Surplus River sect who are supposed to receive him should be arriving soon. Lu Linger pursed her lips unhappily, but she didn't say anything else. Kai Jinfeng laughed dryly. Just as he was about to say something, Lu Bai spoke first. Mr. Kai, we have no intention of making things difficult for you or your sect. However, we will be taking these three people away today. I believe Mr. Kai will not have any objections. Kai Jinfeng looked at the Samling, who were walking towards him in a triangular formation. He had no confidence that he could defeat the three of them. Although he was a fifth-layer core forging stage cultivator, he was still an alchemist. His strength was not considered strong among cultivators of the same level. Kai Jinfeng looked at the Samling, who was glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. Then, he looked at Du Jialua, who was standing in front of the unconscious Madame Du and the little fox demon. Kai Jinfeng did not know what to do. When the Samling saw that he was not speaking, he thought that Kai Jinfeng was stalling for time again, so he quickly approached him. Kai Jinfeng's heart tightened, and he hurriedly said, Please wait. You can take the little fox demon and the woman with you. However, the mortal boy has nothing to do with the three of you. I hope that the three of you can give me some face and leave him with our sect. What do you think? Kai Jinfeng thought that the three core forging stage beasts had appeared because of the little fox demon and Madame Du from Kai Jinfeng's point of view. As long as he could bring Du Jialua back to the Overflowing River sect, the others had nothing to do with him. The Samling looked at each other. Kai Jinfeng saw this and thought that the Samling was tempted. After all, he was a fifth-layer core forging stage cultivator. If the three of them really wanted to fight to the death with him, he was confident that he could hold on until the cultivators of the Overflowing River sect arrived. Haha, since that's the case, the three of you, what do you want to do? How dare you? Rumble. A series of explosions rang out as the three beasts launched their attacks. Kai Jinfeng, who had originally thought that the situation was no longer a big deal, was caught off guard. He didn't expect that the three early core forging realm beasts in front of him would have such tyrannical strength when they joined forces. For a time, he was beaten back by the three beasts and was in a very sorry state. Originally, Kai Jinfeng thought that his conditions were enough to tempt the Samling. However, he did not expect that the Samling's purpose was to come for the mortal Du Jialua, not the little fox demon and Madame Du, who was lying on the ground. The Samling's minds were interlinked. When they attacked, they cooperated with each other, especially Lu Linger. She usually acted like a spoiled child in front of Lu Ping, so she had obtained several magic treasures from Lu Ping. It could be said that apart from Debao, Lu Linger had the most magic treasures among Lu Ping's spiritual pets. In addition, she had integrated part of the inheritance of the Ice Dragon clan through the Ice Dragon Pearl. Her strength could be said to be the best among the Samling. Although Lu Hai did not have as many magic treasures as Lu Linger, he cultivated water attribute skills, so he received the most pointers from Lu Ping. Lu Hai was a solid person, and all his efforts were spent on cultivation. If Lu Linger did not win with magic treasures, Lu Linger might not be Lu Hai's match even if she became the leader of the Ice Dragon clan. Among the Samling, Lu Bai, who was the eldest sister, was the weakest. However, when the Samling joined forces to fight against the enemy, Lu Bai was often the link between Lu Hai and Lu Linger. She was the link between the Samling and the Samling as a whole. She was also the key to the Samling's ability to challenge mid-stage core forging stage cultivators. It could be said that Lu Bai was the true core of the Samling. The more Kai Jinfeng fought, the more shocked he became. Initially, he thought that even if he was not a match for the three Fey cultivators, It would not be easy for them to defeat him with his mid-stage core forging stage cultivation. As long as he could hold the three of them back, when the reinforcements from the Ying-He sect arrived, it would not be up to the three of them. However, after Kai Junfeng started fighting with the Samling, he quickly became unable to attend to one thing and lose sight of the other. The pill cauldron on top of his head was hit by the Samling's continuous attacks. Every time it rang, Kai Junfeng felt a heart-wrenching pain. These were the only 3 high-grade pill cauldrons in the Ying-He sect. Now, he was using them as a defensive magic treasure to resist the continuous attacks of his opponents. If the other alchemists in the sect found out about this, they would definitely join forces to complain about him to Changhe Laozu. Escape. He had to escape. If this went on, even if he could hold on until reinforcements arrived, the pill cauldron on top of his head would be destroyed. Even if he offered the mortal boy to Laozu, it would only be a good deed. If someone else slandered Changhe Laozu, this deed might become a sin. Kai Junfeng made up his mind. The attacks in his hands suddenly became fierce. He used many spells that would cause damage to both sides. However, his gaze became erratic. He started to observe the situation around him and prepared to escape when the opportunity presented itself. Samling was very intelligent. He had followed Lu Ping for decades and had seen many fights in the cultivation world. Although he was young, he had much more experience in fighting than Kai Junfeng, who had a high status in the sect and was used to living like a prince. Seeing Kai Junfeng like this, Samling was certain that Kai Junfeng wanted to escape. Furthermore, Samling had more or less inherited Lu Ping's style of looting. In addition, De Bao was a person who liked to take advantage of others. He had long set his sights on the high-grade pill cauldron on top of Kai Junfeng's head. Although Lu Ping currently had a top-grade pill cauldron and a magic treasure-grade pill cauldron in his hands, given his status in Jinling, he could summon other pill cauldrons that were idle at any time. However, a high-grade pill cauldron was still a pleasant surprise for Lu Ping. Kai Junfeng suddenly slapped the pill cauldron hovering above his head. The lid of the pill cauldron flew up and a yellow flame poured out from the pill cauldron. With Kai Junfeng at the center, it spread out in all directions. One of the flames seemed to be deliberately charging towards Du Jialua and the Du clan members behind him, as well as the little fox Yao. Once it touched them, the 3 of them would be reduced to ashes. Kai Junfeng was betting. He was betting that Samling would not just watch as Du Jialua and the other 2 died. The flame released from the pill cauldron was a mid-grade Earth-level spiritual fire of heaven and earth that Long River Laozu had rewarded Kai Junfeng after he had successfully advanced to become an alchemy grandmaster. It was the foundation of Kai Junfeng's survival in the sect and the fundamental medium for him to use his final trump card to save his life. As expected, although it was difficult for the Samling to block Kai Junfeng's flame magic, they might be able to block Kai Junfeng again if they worked together. However, when the flame rushed towards Du Jialua and the others, Lu Hai had no choice but to retreat and block the flame. In this way, the encirclement formed by the Samling's cooperation had a flaw. Kai Junfeng laughed loudly. Haha, the mountains will never change and the rivers will always flow. The Ying-He sect will remember what you have given me today. We will definitely repay you in the future. As he spoke, his figure had already turned into a ball of flame and fled outwards. Trying to run? Lu Ling sneered and took out an item from her hand. She suddenly injected all the vital energy in her body into it. A talisman weapon. Kai Junfeng looked at the item in Lu Ling's hand and his pupils shrank. Waves of despair crashed into his mind. Chapter 634. The practitioner weapon slowly rose up, and a yellow light covered Kai Junfeng's body. He felt as if a mountain was pressing down on his body. Kai Junfeng used all the true essence in his body to break free, but it was difficult for him to fly away. Kai Junfeng had no choice but to use the elixir furnace that was floating in the air to hit Lu Linger. At the same time, the spiritual fire in the elixir furnace burned the practitioner weapon that was emitting the yellow light. Lu Linger was not surprised but happy. The protective chi on her body flashed and a 3-foot-thick ice appeared in front of her, temporarily blocking the impact of the elixir furnace and the spiritual fire. Lu Bai took the opportunity to swing the spirit whip in her hand and wrapped it around one of the bronze feet at the bottom of the elixir furnace. Lu Hai suddenly followed, and worked with Lu Linger to suppress the spiritual fire back into the elixir furnace. At this time, Kai Zhenfeng could see that the three demonic cultivators were not trying to kill him, but for his high-grade elixir furnace. This elixir furnace could be said to be the foundation of his survival in the Yinghe sect. However, if he did not take the opportunity to escape and wait for the three to free themselves, it would be his death. Kai Zhenfeng stirred up the vital energy in his body. While Samling was suppressing the elixir furnace and the spiritual fire, he escaped like a snail, trying to escape from the yellow light. It was not easy for the three spirits to obtain a high-grade pill furnace and an earth-ranked mid-grade spirit fire. How could they still care about Kai Zhenfeng? Kai Zhenfeng had finally escaped from the light of the talisman weapon. He did not dare to turn back and immediately fled in the direction of the Abundant River sect. Lu Bai put away the elixir furnace and the suppressed spiritual fire. Lu Hai scratched his head and asked curiously, "Linger, didn't father give this practitioner weapon to Brother Debao? How did you get this talisman weapon from him?" Lu Linger smiled proudly and said, "You don't have to worry about that. In short, I have something on Brother Debao. If he does not give it to me, I will tell father about his embarrassment." At that time, Lu Bai looked at the somewhat at a loss Du Jialua and said, "All right, I have more or less completed the task that father instructed me to do. We should not stay here for long. We need to leave this place quickly." As she finished speaking, Lu Bai directly swept the spirit whip in her hand, and the Du clan was wrapped within it. Du Jialua's expression became anxious, but before he could do anything, Lu Hai, who was at the side, picked him up. The remaining little fox demon giggled and picked up the little fox demon who was curled up on the ground, trembling all over. Samling was about to rise into the conveyance light when he heard Lu Linger say with a smile, "Oh, I almost forgot that there is a little guy here. Take him back. Maybe Brother Debao will like him." When Du Jialua looked over, he saw a piece of ice suddenly appear under the feet of a silver-white mouse that was about to escape. The little mouse tumbled on the ice, but it could not escape the restraints of the ice. In the end, it seemed to realize that it could not escape. It could only tremble all over and look pitifully at Samling, who was already floating in the air. Lu Linger giggled, and the little mouse flew backwards. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws in the air, and then landed in Lu Linger's conveyance light. On the side of Ying River, 3 conveyance lights descended. Samling, Du Jialua, and the others appeared on the shore of Ying River. Lu Bai frowned and looked at the sky in the distance behind her. She saw several conveyance lights streaking across the sky, approaching from afar, chasing in the direction of the 3 of them. Lu Bai knew very well that this mission was actually a process that Lu Ping used to test them. If they did not succeed this time, it was likely that Samling would not be able to leave Lu Ping's sight for a long time. Although Samling did not want to leave Lu Ping, they were eager to grow up, eager to be recognized by Lu Ping. If they could not even complete this small task, even if Lu Ping did not say anything, Samling would feel extremely disappointed. Lu Bai turned around and said, "Linger, you take the 3 of them and leave first. Second brother, and I will hold them off for a while." Before Lu Linger could speak, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the middle of Ying River. Then, a giant turtle with a shell of at least 3 meters in diameter suddenly floated up from the river. Lu Linger said happily, "Brother Dague, did father ask you to come and help us?" This giant turtle was Lu Dague's original body. The giant turtle nodded at the 3 of them and then approached the river bank. Lu Linger clapped her hands and said with a smile, "That's great. Brother Dague, you should take this boy, his mother, and sister back to father's cave residence first. By the way, there is also this little mouse. It looks like a spirit-seeking mouse. I think Brother Debao will like it." Under Du Jialua's frightened gaze, the 2 humans and 2 demons were thrown onto the back of the huge tortoise by the 3 spirits. Before Du Jialua could cry out in alarm, the tortoise sank into the water with them. Lu Linger turned to Lu Bai and Lu Hai and smiled. "This is good. The 3 of us can go all out and fight against the human cultivators of the Ying River sect." Samling looked at each other and smiled. Then, he immediately flew up to meet the few rays of light in the sky. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion in the sky. In the sky above the Ying River where Lu Dague had just disappeared, It was as if a curtain had been lifted, revealing the three cultivators hidden inside. The person in front frowned and looked at Samling, who was fighting with the cultivators of the Ing River sect a few miles away. He did not speak for a long time. Next to him, a cultivator in his 30s with thick eyebrows and big eyes turned to the cultivator next to him and said with some shock, "Why are there sea demons here? Could it be that this trip to Central Mainland has already been leaked and the news of the Ing Tian sect's dojo has already been found out by the demons overseas? But what was the background of those three little demons? Why can't I, a late core forging cultivator, see through them? Brother Zhang, did you discover anything?" On his other side, a stern-faced cultivator glanced at him indifferently, then asked the person in front, "Martial uncle, have you figured out the origins of those three little demons?" If Lu Ping was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that the cultivator with a cold expression was Zhenren Zhangxi, one of the best of the second-generation cultivators of the Songhai sect. As for the elder in front, he was Donghua Laozu, who was at the peak of the early Dharma stage. "It's the green sea snakes." Ancestor Donghua let out a long sigh of relief, and he said with a trace of rejoicing, "Fortunately, we didn't make a move to kill him just because he was a cultivator from the demon race. Otherwise, we would have surely caused a great calamity this time. The Jadesea Spirit Serpent clan isn't something my Blue Sea sect can afford to offend." "What? The green sea snakes?" The cultivator with thick eyebrows and big eyes from the Songhai sect with the surname Lu widened his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, "How did the king of the East Sea Demon clan get his hands on the North Ice Plains? Could the news of the Ing Tian sect have been leaked?" Not only cultivator Lu, but even Zhang Shi, who was standing next to him, had a look of surprise on his face. The Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan's notoriety in the East Sea cultivation world was much greater than that of the primordial giant crocodile in the North Sea cultivation world. Its true strength was much stronger than that of the other two top demon clans in the East Sea, the Fire Phoenix clan and the Current Fish clan. It was the only demon clan in the East Sea that could confront the Crystal Palace head-on. The appearance of the green sea snakes in the North Ice Plains made the cultivators of the Songhai sect suspicious. Cultivator Lu blinked and said, "Could it be that the green sea snakes really know about the Ing Tian sect? But this information is only known to the true core cultivators of the top 10 sects of the North Sea. Could it be that there are demon spies among these core cultivators? Or did the Emerald Sea Spirit Snake clan discover our tracks?" Zhang Shi thought for a while and said, "It's not very likely. Although the top sects sneaked into the Middle Earth separately, they used the super long-distance teleportation formation of the top 5 sects of the East Sea. It's impossible for the green sea snakes to know about it." At this time, Donghua Laozu said again, "Maybe it's not the green sea snakes." Zhang Shi was confused and asked, "What do you mean, Martial Uncle?" Ancestor Donghua said faintly, "Don't forget about that turtle demon from before, and that little fox demon, and that spirit-seeking mouse. Moreover, that woman that fainted is closely related to the demon race as well." Zhang Shi thought for a while and said, "That's right. Just now, the green sea snake mentioned father and someone's name. It sounds like it's related to demon cultivators. These demon cultivators belong to different races, but they can gather together. That's what's strange about them." Cultivator Lu said in a low, muffled voice, "Martial Uncle, are you saying that these demon cultivators have a cultivator with a higher cultivation and status as their backer? This is the real reason why these demon cultivators of different races can gather together and even challenge the local tyrant, the Abundant River sect?" Donghua Laozu shook his head and said, "Although it makes sense, it might not be correct." Donghua Laozu thought for a while and asked Zhang Shi, "Martial nephew Zhang, you once traveled the Middle Earth. Have you heard of the Spirit Beast Taming sect?" Zhang Shi was surprised. Martial Uncle suspects that the person leading these demon cultivators is a cultivator from the Spirit Beast Taming sect? Then, he suddenly said, yes, what Martial Uncle said makes a lot of sense. Only the mysterious beast taming spirit sect cultivators can integrate these different races of demonic cultivators together and not make them lose their spiritual wisdom because of the spiritual sense of the demonic cultivators. However, the cultivators from the spirit beast taming sect have always been very mysterious in the cultivation world. I didn't expect to encounter them here. In that case, we can't afford to offend these demon cultivators. Otherwise, if we offend these mysterious fellows from the spirit beast taming sect, they might be even more troublesome to deal with than the green sea snakes. However, although the spirit beast taming sect has always had an ambiguous relationship with the demon clan, I've never heard of anyone being so bold as to make a green sea snake their demon pet. Dongwa Laozu said meaningfully, not all cultivators from the spirit beast taming sect are humans. The lucky Lu Dague did not know that he had already been noticed. When he floated up from the Yinghe River, he had already arrived at the entrance of the cave. At the entrance of the cave, Du Jialua, who was still in a state of shock, immediately saw one of the two immortals who had gone to the lone peak of the celestial mountain. He was a chubby young immortal with a mustache who had been smiling all along. He was standing there looking at him. Du Jialua's expression brightened. The anxiety he had felt after being rescued by Samling and encountering Lu Dague immediately disappeared. Chapter 635. When Madame Du slowly woke up from her coma, she found that she was in a rock cave. She jumped up and found that her body, which had long been on the verge of death, had healed more than half of its injuries. However, Madame Du did not lower her guard at all. She had experienced far too many things like this. The cultivation world was full of deceit and deception, especially human cultivators. Although she believed that her intelligence was not inferior to anyone in the Yao clan, she did not dare to fight with human cultivators at all. That was simply digging her own grave. She was most worried about her two children. She did not know that the Yinghe sect was pursuing her not only because she had killed a cultivator from the Yinghe sect, but also because of her adopted son, Du Jialua, who had a bloodline full of medicinal power. Madame Du slowly walked out of her stone room and saw a fat young man who was about 17 or 18 years old. He had a mustache and was walking towards her. Behind this fat young man's feet, a silver-white little mouse was following him step by step. After discovering someone, the little mouse quickly slid down the fat young man's trouser leg and climbed onto his shoulder. Then, it hid behind his ear and carefully peeked its head out to look at Madame Du in front of him. Haha, you are awake? My boss wants to see you. Come with me. Spirit-seeking mouse demon? Madame Du looked at Debeo in surprise. However, she immediately realized that what she was doing was very inappropriate. She quickly said, May I ask which demon king you are serving? Where are my two children now? Although Madame Du tried her best to remain calm, a spirit-seeking mouse that could cultivate to the core forging realm still brought her an inexplicable shock. Spirit-seeking mice were the lowest level of demon beasts in the cultivation world. Those that could cultivate to the late blood refining realm could be called the ancestors of the spirit-seeking mice. Now, in front of her was a living spirit-seeking mouse that had taken human form. Debeo turned to look at Madame Du. He was not angry that Madame Du had exposed his identity. Instead, he turned and said as he walked, Your two children are fine now. Come with me. My boss has something to ask you. Madame Du, who was in a hurry, followed Debeo towards the stone room where Lu Ping was. From afar, she saw Du Jialua kneeling in front of a stone room. Luo. Madame Du's voice was filled with joy. Du Jialua was stunned. He turned around and saw Madame Du standing not far behind him, unscathed. He immediately jumped up from the ground and rushed towards Madame Du. He said in surprise, Mother, you're actually fine? Madame Du looked at the smiling Debeo and immediately understood. Du Jialua was kneeling on the ground. Clearly, he was begging the mysterious boss to save him. As expected, Debeo said with a smile, Your filial piety is commendable. When he saw that you were on the verge of death when you were rescued and brought back to the abode, he begged my boss to save you. Even though I've told him over and over again that your injuries are fine, that kid still knelt on the ground and refused to get up, and he insisted on seeing that you're fine. Madame Du rubbed Du Jialua's head and said to Debeo gratefully, Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Debeo chuckled and said, You don't have to thank me. If you want to thank someone, thank my boss. Madame Du nodded and said, I wonder where my daughter is now. Please tell me, Your Excellency. Just as Madame Du finished speaking, She saw a little girl who looked like she was carved from jade walk out of the stone room. Who else could it be other than the little fox demon in her hands? When the injured little fox demon saw Madame Du, she immediately leaped out of the little girl's arms and ran towards Madame Du. Madame Du bent down and held the fox demon tightly in her arms. Lu Linger was surprised when she saw that Madame Du was the little fox demon's mother. However, she still said, "Father is already waiting inside. You should come with me to see him first." When Madame Du saw that her daughter was safe and sound, she felt a faint pressure coming from the little girl in front of her. She actually felt a natural pressure from the little girl. This was the pressure of a top-level demon beast. Madame Du's heart trembled. If it was said that the lowest-level demon beast, the spirit-seeking mouse, was able to grow into a core-forging stage cultivator, then the appearance of this little girl made Madame Du feel a faint sense of awe towards this cultivator that she had never met before. Once they entered the stone room, a thick wave of spiritual chi immediately bathed everyone in it. Madame Du took 2 deep breaths, and an intoxicated expression appeared on her face. How many years had it been since she had felt such thick spiritual chi? However, what shocked her even more was that after she entered the stone room, she immediately saw 2 more children who looked similar to the little girl from before, a boy and a girl. The blood pressure from the 3 children caused the Du clan to not dare to move at all. Even though her cultivation had been higher than the 3 of them in the past, the natural suppression from the blood of the Yao clan filled her with fear. She had learned from Du Jialua about the situation after she fainted that day. She knew that these 3 childlike cultivators were the saviors of her family. At the same time, a huge turtle brought them to this cave mansion. The fat young man just now was one of the 2 immortals that she met that day who went to the lone peak of Heavenly Mountain and gave her 2 spirit stones. The other immortal gave her a life-saving treasure talisman. He was the boss that the fat immortal spoke of and the father that the 3 little immortals spoke of. After that, Madame Du saw the turtle immortal who brought her family to this cave mansion. He was a simple and sturdy young man and a 13 or 14-year-old little girl. Madame Du also felt the blood pressure of a top-level demon beast from this little girl again. However, compared with the 3 younger children, the blood pressure of this little girl was a little weaker. Moreover, it was slightly different from the previous 3 people. Obviously, they were not of the same race, but her cultivation level was higher than that of the 3 children. Madame Du silently followed behind Debeo. In her heart, she was even more in awe and curiosity about the unknown cultivator. She also had a vague guess about the identity of that person. In the stone room, Lu Ping was studying the ancient book about the creation of high-grade talismans that he brought out from the Ingtian dojo, especially about the creation of the restriction-breaking talisman. Lu Ping himself was quite experienced in breaking restrictions. Unfortunately, the inheritance of the restriction-breaking talisman in Zhenling could only reach 5 colors. Moreover, there were many gaps in the inheritance of the 5th color. In Zhenling, other than Tian Shuelaozu, who could rely on her Dharma manifestation stage cultivation, even Xian Zhuzhenren could only make a 4-colored restriction-breaking talisman. Moreover, the spiritual materials and resources wasted in the process of making the restriction-breaking talisman sometimes did not make up for the loss. Just when Lu Ping had made some progress in the study of the 4-colored restriction-breaking talisman, he saw Debeo walking into his training room and saying, "Boss, that kid's mother has woken up." When Madame Du walked into Lu Ping's training room, she saw a young man with no trace of spiritual energy sitting cross-legged on the seat of honor. Madame Du did not think that the person in front of her was an ordinary person just because there was no spiritual energy coming from him. This meant that the person in front of her had already reached the realm of returning to one's natural state. Even when her cultivation was not damaged in the past, she was afraid that she would not be a match for this young man in front of her. Thus, Madame Du lowered her attitude even more. She respectfully knelt in front of Lu Ping and said, "This widow, Madame Du, thanks immortal for saving my life." A green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes as he looked at Madame Du in front of him. He had a look of surprise on his face as he said, "Fellow Taoist, you are originally from the Demon Fox clan, right? This is the first time I have seen someone possessed by a golden core. Seeing that your consciousness is not damaged, I believe that before the possession, Your cultivation was no lower than the late core forging stage. However, it seems that even though your consciousness was not damaged before the possession, your golden core was heavily damaged. Your cultivation has dropped all the way to the late blood condensation stage. What a pity. When Madame Du heard that Lu Ping had exposed her identity with just one word, her whole body trembled like a sieve. However, she was after all a late core forging stage cultivator. After a while, she calmed down and said, I am confident that my Demon Fox clan's secret technique will not be seen through by cultivators below the Dharma realm. I didn't think that you would be able to see through my identity with just one look. When Lu Ping saw that Madame Du admitted to it calmly, he smiled and said, It's just a small trick. It's just that this is the first time I have seen someone possessed by a Demon Fox clan, so I can't help but be a little curious. I hope that fellow Taoist won't be offended. However, does that kid outside know that you are not his mother? Madame Du nodded and said, The person I possessed was not his mother, but a woman who was on the verge of death. She was later rescued by Luo Er's father. After recovering, I found that my cultivation foundation was greatly damaged and I could no longer advance. At the same time, I was afraid of the dangers of the cultivation world. In order to repay a debt of gratitude, I married Luo Er's father and wanted to be a mortal woman. Unexpectedly, Luo Er's father died of an illness 10 years ago, and I gave birth to a daughter. I had no choice but to raise the brother and sister with all my heart. Fortunately, Luo Er knew my identity from a young age. Luo Er's nature is pure, and he did not have any negative emotions just because he had a demon foster mother and a mixed blood sister. On the contrary, he was very filial. Lu Ping nodded. But then, he asked curiously, Fellow Taoist, although you're a monster, you were also a monster cultivator before you took over my body. You should have some understanding of human cultivation. Why did you give your adopted son a body-strengthening treasure before he even awakened his bloodline and became a cultivator? Don't you know that this will cause him to lose the opportunity to activate his bloodline and become a cultivator? How do you know? Madame Du was inexplicably shocked. She looked at the calm Lu Ping and seemed to be at a loss. Debao, who was at the side, saw that Madame Du's face was full of wariness and said with some dissatisfaction, I'm afraid you still don't know. Do you really think that the cultivator from the Yinghe sect would come and treat your injuries out of kindness? They only wanted your adopted son's pure bloodline that is filled with medicinal power. Don't tell me you don't know what a human pill is. Chapter 636. Mortal Core. Madame Du exclaimed. She clearly had some understanding of mortal cores. Debao continued, Of course it's a mortal core. Otherwise, do you think the blood condensation adept from the Yinghe sect would go to your house to treat you for no reason? I'm afraid that when the Yinghe sect went to the Du family village to test if the youths in the village had the potential to activate their bloodline, your son's secret had already been discovered. I heard that the Yinghe sect also has a Dharma adept named Laozu. I'm sure you understand the importance of treasures that can strengthen the body of a Dharma adept, right? Madame Du asked in confusion. But why didn't the Yinghe sect take Luo Er away when they discovered that there was something wrong with his body? Why did they let our family live in the village? Lu Ping smiled and said, Let me explain this. The most important part of refining a mortal core is one's bloodline, one that is full of vitality. Furthermore, it has to be consumed soon after refining the mortal core. Only then will it have the greatest effect in the shortest time possible. The Dharma adept of the Yinghe sect is probably not prepared for this, which is why he allowed you to live. In their eyes, you are just a bunch of mortals. Do you think you can escape from their control? Madame Du was stunned and did not speak. After a while, she seemed to react and knelt before Lu Ping. She said, Friend, please save the three of us. Lu Ping waved his hand and helped Madame Du up from the ground. He said, Fellow Taoist, you don't have to do this. Although I am not a match for the Yinghe sect's old ancestor, as long as you hide here temporarily, I believe the Yinghe sect's cultivators won't be able to find you. However, I still want to know why fellow Taoist gave your adopted son the medicinal pellet to strengthen his body before he activated his bloodline. Lu Ping could tell that although Lu Ping had seen through many of Madame Du's secrets, she was still very wary of him. Thus, he questioned her and tried to gain the upper hand. Indeed, from Lu Ping's words, Madame Du could tell that he did not trust her identity as a demon. She sighed and said, "This is because of my daughter." With that, Madame Du told Lu Ping about the process of Du Jialua consuming the mortal core. It turned out that Madame Du's attempt at possession was not successful and had many repercussions. She had been bedridden all these years. When Du Jialua was bedridden, his little fox sister saw that her brother was working hard, so she often went deep into the mountains to collect wild fruits and vegetables in order to reduce her brother's burden. However, during this process, the little fox demon had mistaken some kind of mortal core as a wild fruit for Du Jialua to eat. Du Jialua did not know what was going on, and after eating it, he fell unconscious for 3 days before waking up. In the future, when Du Jialua's cultivation is successful, I will treat it as his opportunity and let him explore it on his own. Chapter 637. The Yingtian sect was a famous sect in the past and had almost unified the entire mountain range. The lone peak of the Heavenly Mountain was merely the location of the Yingtian sect's headquarters. Lu Ping did not find it strange that the Yingtian sect had set up several heritage mystic realms in this mountain range. After all, a large sect like the Jinling sect would not put all their eggs in one basket. As for the 3 sects that were established in this mountain range, they had actually started to grow after discovering the Yingtian sect's inheritance secret realm thousands of years ago. What puzzled Lu Ping was that after thousands of years of exploration, apart from Yingtian sect's dojo, there was actually a mystic realm in this mountain range that had been passed down without being discovered by anyone. While Lu Ping was amazed at the Du clan's luck in discovering the Yingtian mystic realm, he was also surprised at the Yingtian sect's rich heritage. Under the Ying River, Lu Ping once again swam up the river with the jade water moon pearl hanging above his head. He headed towards the source of the Yingtian sect's training grounds. Lu Ping swam upstream from the bottom of the Ying River instead of flying towards the source of the river from the sky. This was to hide his tracks. After all, the 3 sects in this mountain range all had the existence of Laozu. Debao and Lu Ping were still standing within the protective shield. Now that Debao's cultivation level had increased, his fear of water was no longer as obvious. "Boss, are you really going to perform the bloodline activation ritual for that kid? What if his bloodline is unable to reach the standard of cultivation after the activation? Wouldn't it be a waste? That kid's body is as strong as a magic weapon. To activate his bloodline, we will need to spend a lot of spiritual materials and elixirs." Debao seemed to still be brooding over the fact that he had wasted so many cultivation resources to activate Du Jialua's bloodline. Lu Ping said nonchalantly, "Even though it is several times more difficult to activate, it is nothing to us." Seeing that Lu Ping did not understand his meaning, Debao said, "Boss, don't tell me you are not interested in that kid's bloodline? That is a mortal core that can strengthen the body." Unlike human cultivators, Yao cultivators did not feel too disgusted by the act of devouring their own kind. It was simply the law of the jungle. This was a common occurrence among the Yao race. And that was because Debao was the one asking the question. Thus, he had learned to be tactful. If it were the Samling, he would probably be even more direct. Lu Ping smiled and said, "First of all, this brat's bloodline doesn't mean much to me. I've already taken the golden firmament pill and the bone forging pill. I also have a golden firmament fruit tree, an azure wood pure jade fruit, a 9-segment white jade lotus root, and 6 ninth grade white jade lotus seeds. Furthermore, celestial phenomenon Laozu once said that this kind of person who was born with a strong body, or rather, before they started cultivating, after entering the world of cultivation, as long as their talent is not too bad and they are hardworking in their cultivation, as long as they do not die prematurely, they will be able to break through to the Dharma stage. If we can take him in as a disciple of Zhenling, our sect may have another Dharma adept in the future." Debao twitched his mouth and said, "Boss, if that kid had met someone else, there is a high chance that he would be like the Yinghe sect and kill him to refine the elixir. After all, cultivating that kid into a Dharma adept would take a lot of time and resources, and there is no guarantee of success. But if he were to kill him on the spot to refine the elixir, he might be able to become a mid-Dharma adept in the future. Lu Ping smiled and did not speak. Debao asked again, "Boss, when do you plan to take a look at the secret territory of the Ying Tian sect that the Du clan mentioned?" Even though Lu Ping did not accept the Du clan's conditions, the Du clan still told Lu Ping the location of the secret territory in order to repay Lu Ping for saving her family. Lu Ping naturally would not be unreasonable and promised that a portion of the treasures obtained from the secret territory would be left to Du Jialuo and her daughter, the little fox demon. Lu Ping thought about it and said, "Let's go to the source of the Ying River first and see if we can open the Ying Tian temple again." The Ying Tian secret territory that the Du clan mentioned could not be discovered for so many years, so it should not be easily discovered this time either. After the trip to the Ying Tian temple of the various sects in the North Sea is completed, we will then go to the secret territory with Uncle Jiang and the others. At the source of the Ying River, Lu Ping filled the earthen jar that looked gray and dull on the outside, but was actually a spiritual Dharma treasure with water from the source of the Ying River. Then, he placed it into the groove. A day later, the sacrificial altar trembled once again as the spatial door opened. Lu Ping and Debao quickly entered the spatial door. Then, the spatial door disappeared once again, and the gray earthen jar disappeared without a trace. Once again, they arrived at the space of the Ying Tian temple. Everything inside was not much different from the last time Lu Ping had arrived. This time, Lu Ping was not in a hurry to find weak restrictions that he could break. Instead, he began to size up the various areas in the Ying Tian temple that were covered by restrictions. He memorized the distribution of the various areas in the Ying Tian temple, as well as the strength of the restrictions. This would be of great use to Zhenling when he explored the Ying Tian temple with the various sects in the North Sea. The Ying Tian temple was actually distributed in concentric circles. In the middle, there was a grand hall that was covered in a thick layer of rainbow restrictions. When Lu Ping used the 3 pure ones to observe from the periphery, he discovered that the surface of the grand hall was covered in 7 rainbow restrictions. A total of 49 beams of light were circulating on the surface of the grand hall. The increase in the number of rainbow restrictions was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. If Lu Ping and his subordinates worked together, they could destroy 1 rainbow restriction. However, if 2 rainbow restrictions covered the same area, then even if Lu Ping and the others' strength was doubled, they would not be able to open it. Looking at the 7 rainbow restrictions in the distance, Lu Ping could not help but feel a little speechless. He did not know if the 10 early Dharma laws Laozu from the North Sea would be able to open this grand hall if they worked together. Surrounding and protecting this central grand hall were 3 smaller buildings that were covered in 6 rainbow restrictions. Unfortunately, just like the central grand hall, Lu Ping still could not clearly see what these 3 grand halls were used for. However, as the Ying Tian temple was the most important inheritance ground of the Ying Tian sect, there was no doubt that these 4 grand halls stored the most important inheritance manuals of the Ying Tian sect. After that, it was not just the buildings that were covered by the 5 rainbow restrictions. In this area, Lu Ping saw a total of 4 buildings. There should be 6 areas covered by the 4-colored restriction and 9 areas covered by the 3-colored restriction. However, one of them had already been broken, leaving only a remnant of the restriction light. Under the cover of the entire Ying Tian dojo's formation, it was still emitting a faint light. It was likely that this restriction had been broken by ancestor Qingjian back then. There should be 12 buildings with 2 restrictions, but 5 of them had already been broken. This must have been done by Qingjian Laozu back then. The remaining areas were the outermost areas that were only covered by 1 restriction. Because these areas had weaker restrictions, they had been more thoroughly broken by Qingjian Laozu back then. Lu Ping could not tell how many areas there were in total. Previously, when Lu Ping broke through the 5 areas that were only covered by 1 array formation, he also found them in the gaps between areas that were covered by 2 or 3 array formations. From this, it could be seen that Qingjian Laozu was really not good at breaking restrictions. Otherwise, with his early Dharma stage strength, even if his strength was not considered too strong among the practitioners of the same level, he should not have only obtained such a result in the Ying Tian temple. After memorizing the distribution and strength of the restrictions in the various areas of the Ying Tian temple, Lu Ping once again carefully explored the temple. Other than the spirit herbs that DeBeo had found, he had extracted another piece of growing soil from the soil where the spirit herbs were growing. Including the 3 pieces from before, he did not even have enough growing soil. After thinking about it, Lu Ping turned the growing soil into powder again and scattered it into the spirit herb garden in the gold house. Other than that, Lu Ping and DeBeo did not find anything else. Feeling helpless, Lu Ping could only focus his attention on the 7 areas that were covered by the 2 rainbow restrictions. With a wave of his hand, he summoned Samling and the rest out of the gold house. DeBeo said excitedly, "Boss, are we going to break the areas covered by the 2 restrictions?" Lu Ping opened a treasure box that he had obtained previously from his storage ring and took out a talisman. The talisman shone with 5 different colors. It was the 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman that Lu Ping had obtained. Lu Ping checked the 7 areas covered by the 2 restrictions. In the end, he found a building that looked like a loft. Lu Ping tried to make a few hand seals to break the restrictions, but he could only barely extinguish the 2 colorful lights in one of the restrictions. Samling and the rest were about to make their move, but they saw Lu Ping stretch out his hand. The restriction-breaking talisman in his hand flew up and turned into a 5-colored ray of light that swept across the area. In an instant, it wiped out the remaining 5 colorful lights in the restriction. Lu Ping secretly felt that it was a pity. If this restriction-breaking talisman was used to break a single restriction, it could break a complete rainbow restriction. Unfortunately, the restrictions here were intertwined and supported by the large formation of the entire Taoist sanctum. Its power was much stronger than ordinary rainbow restrictions. In this way, it was quite difficult for it to work together with Lu Ping's restriction-breaking technique to barely break a rainbow restriction. Lu Ping shouted, and his spiritual pets attacked with all their strength. At the same time, Lu Ping also took out the Chonglu sword and the golden scale sword, displaying 2 kinds of great swordsmanship magic powers. Then he used the 7 treasures Thunder Gourd and a Thunder Light magic power. After the 3 great magic powers were used together, a landslide fell from the sky. This time, DeBeo was much smarter. He knew that his strength was the lowest among Lu Ping and the others, so when everyone attacked, he didn't attack together. Instead, he took out the talisman weapon that Lu Ping gave him and held it above his head. Just as Lu Ping's landslide fell from the sky, DeBeo suddenly threw out the talisman weapon. With the help of the talisman weapon, the landslide smashed towards the restriction with the force of a thunderbolt. With the help of the talisman weapon, its power was even more powerful than before. With a loud bang, the entire restriction shook, and the pavilion that was covered by the restriction also seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. The power of the landslide was originally weaker than that of the golden scale sword, but with the help of the talisman weapon, the power of this attack was comparable to that of the spirit-nurturing magic treasure, the Chonglu sword. As for the remaining 2 lights, after Lu Ping took out the natal gentian formation, under the attack of the 12 gentian beads, they were easily smashed into spirit stars that filled the sky. Chapter 638. It's broken! It's broken! Following DeBeo's excited roar, Lu Ping and the others destroyed the restrictions covering the pavilion. Lu Ping, on the other hand, looked at the pavilion in front of him with slight surprise. DeBeo was very observant. Seeing the surprise in Lu Ping's eyes, DeBeo couldn't help but ask carefully, "Boss, is there something wrong?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "Earlier, when we were breaking the restrictions, we were afraid that we would break the pavilion. Now, it seems like we were worrying for nothing. How could such a spirit-nurturing treasure be destroyed so easily?" DeBeo looked at the pavilion in surprise and said, "A spirit-nurturing treasure? Boss, are you talking about this pavilion?" This was a pavilion that was 28 feet tall. The pavilion's design was unique, and it was divided into 8 sides. Each side was 18 feet long. The pavilion had a total of 8 floors, and each floor was about 10 feet tall. Lu Ping looked at the entrance of the pavilion. There was a 3-foot-long plaque with the words, "Buyering Pavilion," written on it. Presumably, this was the name of the pavilion. However, a large spatial treasure like the Buyering Pavilion could not be refined like the flowing sword or the multicolored cloud robe, which were spirit-nurturing treasures, and could not be directly refined with true essence. Inside these spatial treasures, There was often a stone tablet that served as a key part of the treasure. As long as one could completely refine it and control it, then it could be used by a cultivator. Lu Ping looked at this huge treasure. If he wanted to know the function of this spirit-nurturing treasure, he would first have to completely control it. Let's go in and take a look first. Lu Ping took the lead and walked into the buying pavilion. Samling and the others followed behind. After entering the first floor of the buying pavilion, everyone felt as if they had entered a golden world. The entire world was filled with a desolate aura. Lu Ping's divine sense swept out, covering almost the entire space. He smiled and said, "They're here." Before anyone could sense anything, they saw a bright light suddenly flash in the sky. The light flashed in front of them, and countless flying swords emitted a cold light, almost blocking the vision of Lu Ping and the others. A sound of flowing water that seemed to have existed since the beginning of time resounded through the world. A flying sword that looked like water hovered above Lu Ping's head, scattering countless sword rays in the sky. The sword rays formed a torrent of swordsmanship above everyone's heads, shattering the golden flying swords that were raining down from the sky. At the same time, the waves seemed to wipe away the scene in front of everyone. An ordinary pavilion space once again appeared in front of everyone. Lu Ping looked towards the center of the pavilion and saw a square table engraved with runic patterns on the ground. If it wasn't Samling, who else could it be? Debao immediately reacted and shouted, "Dagaway, wait for me." However, what he heard was Lu Dagaway's silly laughter, and a huge tortoise also sank to the bottom of the sea. Amidst the laughter, Lu Qiner and Zilon also flew up into the sky, leaving only Debao alone on the beach. He watched as the giant wave came closer and higher. Debao also wanted to fly up, but just as he was about to use the vital energy in his body, he discovered that flying was forbidden in this space, and with Debao's strength, it was impossible for him to break through the shackles of this restriction. For Lu Qiner and Zilon, flying was their talent. As long as they changed back to their original forms, the restriction would not work on them. Debao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He saw that the giant wave was close to him. As long as the wave fell, Debao and the beach under his feet would be swept into the sea forever. Debao made up his mind, closed his eyes, and shouted, "Boss, help!" However, after a long time, the feeling of being hit by the giant wave did not come. Instead, he heard a burst of laughter. Debao stood up and opened his eyes. He saw that he was standing on the floor of a loft, and Samling and the others were laughing around him. Lu Ping stretched out his hand, and there was a drop of water spinning in his palm. Lu Ping dripped the drop of water from his hand, and it once again floated above the table in the center. Lu Ping clapped his hands and said, "Let's go." The fourth floor of the loft was hot. When they came in, they stood on a desert. Debao wiped the sweat off his head and said, "Boss, what spirit item is it this time?" Lu Ping naturally did not care about the heat. On the contrary, he was surprised and stamped his feet. A clear spring emerged from the desert, and the hot weather instantly cooled down. As the number of clear springs increased, the illusion of the desert also disappeared. When they reappeared on the fourth floor, Debao saw that the square table in the center was empty, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "Why are there no spirit items this time?" Lu Ping said, "If there is a spirit item to suppress it, this will not be so easy." On the fifth floor of the loft, everyone looked at the endless plain. Lu Ping said calmly, "Let's go." Everyone had just walked a few meters on the plain when Debao seemed to have discovered something. He said, "Something is wrong. Hide." One by one, everyone left their original positions. When they turned their heads to look, they saw a sharp stone all suddenly rising from the ground where they had been standing. When Lu Ping heard Debao shout, he also felt something was wrong. A bluish-purple disc suddenly appeared under his feet. Then, Lu Ping's feet shook. Before the stone all could spit out from the ground, it was blocked by Lu Ping's feet. At this moment, Debao, who had just dodged the stone all sneak attack, shouted again, "Hide! Hide! It's coming again." The stone all on the ground kept stabbing out from where everyone was standing. Despite Debeo's constant reminder, there were still people who could not dodge in time. Debeo simply rolled on the ground and transformed into his original form, allowing the stone all to stab his back. Lu Qiner wanted to fly into the air, but a huge suction came from the ground, making Lu Qiner's weight seem to have increased several times. In the case of not being able to use flying escape, even her flying talent could not get rid of the gravitational force of the ground. Lu Ping looked at the scene of the spirit pets under his hands in a mess. He smiled helplessly. He stretched out his hand and pointed to the storage ring. A blue stream of water turned into a wave and rotated around Lu Ping. Lu Hai saw clearly that this wave of water was Lu Ping's promise to let him smelt 3 portions of low-grade earth step, Songlan water, when he advanced to the middle stage of core forging. Lu Ping pushed the wave out of his body. The small wave suddenly turned into a monstrous wave, and the wave continued to spread. After a while, it turned into an overwhelming flood, spreading towards the wilderness on all sides. The art of vast seas and mulberry fields. This was the most difficult great magical power to practice in the North Sea's 12 orthodox techniques. It was also the spell that Zhang Tianlin Laozu had highly evaluated in the past. After Lu Ping's cultivation advanced to the middle stage of core forging, he finally had a small success in it. The flood swept towards the plains. In just a moment, this boundless wilderness became a boundless country of water. This time, Daguay finally returned to its kind nature. Daguay turned into its original body and floated on the water. On the huge tortoiseshell were Debeo, Lu Qiner, and the others. Suddenly, there was a rumbling sound from the sea. The distant sea suddenly sank, as if the seabed had collapsed. Lu Ping smiled slightly and put away a jade bowl in his hand. The flood that filled the sky suddenly returned to the jade bowl and turned back into Tsanglan water. The previous wilderness also turned back into an ordinary pavilion. On the wooden table in the center, a black stone was suspended in the air. It seemed to have an inexplicable attraction, making people want to walk into it. Chapter 639. High-grade earth step, magnetic absorbing stone? Debeo exclaimed, "Boss, leave this treasure for me. When I advance to the late core forging stage, I must smelt this spirit object." Debeo had been reading all kinds of books and records about the cultivation world that Lu Ping had found for him. His knowledge and vision had greatly increased. Although he was limited by his experience and his knowledge had not increased by much, he gradually showed that he was knowledgeable, which made the other spirit pets of Lu Ping admire him. The magnetic absorbing stone was an extremely rare earth attribute spirit object in the cultivation world. Although it was only a high-grade earth step spirit object, it had 2 characteristics that made it very popular among cultivators who practiced earth attribute spells. The first characteristic was similar to the Xinyuan heavy water that Lu Ping had smelted. It could greatly increase the density of a cultivator's Zhenyuan. Of course, the amount of increase was far from comparable to the Xinyuan heavy water, but even so, it was still quite amazing. The second characteristic was similar to the gravitational force that restrained Lu Qiner's flight. Through this characteristic of the magnetic absorbing stone, after smelting this spirit object, cultivators could practice a magical power called the moving mountain technique. This magical power was actually the same as the spell contained in the talisman weapon in Debeo's hand. After listening to Debeo's general explanation, Lu Linger jumped out to attack Debeo. She said, "Fatty Bao, with your laziness, you are only preparing to smelt a high-grade mystic step black jade stone when you advance to the mid-core forging stage. I'm afraid you will need the help of Father's minor forging spirit pill. Even so, you still want to smelt a high-grade earth step spirit object when you advance to the late core forging stage. I think it will be difficult for you to smelt this spirit object when you advance to the gold core forging stage." Hearing this, Debeo flew into a rage. His fat face turned red. He said, "Little Linger, don't talk nonsense. When did I not cultivate hard? Just you wait. I will definitely smelt this magnetic absorbing stone when I advance to the late core forging stage." Lu Linger showed a disdainful expression and said, "Pang Bao, I'd be a fool to believe you. Besides, did Father agree to smelt this treasure for you?" Debeo was stunned. He looked at Lu Ping with a hint of pleading in his eyes. Lu Ping smiled and said, "If you are qualified, do you think I can stop you?" Debeo was overjoyed and proudly showed off to Lu Linger. Lu Linger curled her lips and said, "What's there to be proud of? Let others see you as if you can smelt high-grade Earth-class spiritual items." Lu Ping knew that Lu Linger was deliberately provoking Debeo, but at this time, it was about time, so he smiled and said, "Okay, it's time to go up to the 6th floor." Looking at Lu Bai's expectant face, Lu Ping smiled and said, "This spirit object is very suitable for buyer when she advances to the mid-stage core forging realm in the future." When Lu Bai heard Lu Ping's words, she knew that Lu Ping had agreed to give her this most suitable spirit object, so she quickly said with joy, "Thank you, father." Lu Ping turned to look at the stairs leading to the 7th floor and said, "Let's go to the 7th floor and have a look. I think it should be a world of ice and snow. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, ice. These were the 7 major attributes of the cultivation world. Previously, everyone had passed through the illusion of 6 of these attributes, so the last one must be an illusion of ice and snow." Lu Linger took the lead and stepped into the 7th floor, and then everyone followed. However, to everyone's surprise, although the 7th floor was still an illusion of heaven and earth, it was not a world of ice and snow. Feeling the slight chill, Lu Linger said with some disappointment, "How can this be called a world of ice and snow? At most, it is only the bleakness of late autumn." Lu Ping laughed and said, "It seems that the ice attribute spirit object used to suppress the illusion of the 7th floor is either too low in grade, or there is no such thing at all." A green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, and then he went straight to a place, stretched out his hand, and with a pa sound, it was as if he had slapped on a wooden table. The world in front of them shattered, and everyone returned to the pavilion. At this time, Lu Ping was standing next to the wooden table in the center of the pavilion. On the wooden table that was engraved with runes, there was really no ice attribute spirit object floating on it, which made Lu Linger very frustrated. After everyone entered the buying tower, they killed all the way from the 1st floor to the 7th floor. With the help of Lu Ping, it could be said that they were almost irresistible. Seeing that there was no harvest on the 7th floor, Debeo hurriedly urged everyone to quickly go to the 8th floor, so that they could see the true face of the buying tower. It was too late to stop them, and everyone had already gone to the 8th floor. Lu Ping looked at everyone disappearing at the staircase of the 8th floor, and he helplessly smiled and muttered to himself, "Forget it. These people have always been bold and unscrupulous. I will let you taste some pain." After saying that, Lu Ping deliberately slowed down his pace and walked step by step towards the 8th floor. Debeo, Lu Qiner, and Lu Linger, the 2 impatient people, led everyone all the way to the 8th floor. When they turned around, they saw that Lu Ping did not follow them in, and their hearts suddenly made a thump sound. Then they heard an earth-shattering thunder in the sky, and when they looked up, they did not know when the sky had suddenly become densely covered with thunder clouds, as if the black mass was hovering above everyone's head. In the black clouds, there was a burst of flickering, followed by a muffled thunder that resounded through the world, and then a thunderbolt smashed down on everyone's head. Debeo hurriedly said, "Let's work together to resist it." After that, everyone gathered around Lu Dague. They heard Lu Dague's low roar, and a tortoiseshell like a dome enveloped everyone in it. The rest of the people took action, each injecting their own zhenqi into the tortoiseshell. The thunderbolt in the sky fell on the tortoiseshell, and the whole black-gray tortoiseshell trembled. If it were not for the help of other zhenqi, Lu Dague would have almost been hit by the thunderbolt and sat on the ground. However, the dark clouds in the sky were getting thicker and thicker, and thunder and lightning fell from the dark clouds one after another. This time, not only Lu Dague, but also Samling and Lu Qiner, who had the highest cultivation, felt that their zhenqi was consumed, and they gradually could not hold on. This time, Debeo finally understood what was going on. It was impossible for Lu Ping to not enter the 8th floor after such a long time. The only possibility was that everyone did not listen to Lu Ping's command and rushed into the 8th floor. Obviously, Lu Ping wanted to make everyone suffer a little, so that they would remember. After understanding the reason, DeBeo suddenly shouted, "Boss, help! We know we were wrong." After DeBeo shouted, the other two naughty people like Lu Qiner and Lu Ling reacted first and hurriedly apologized, asking Lu Ping to quickly help, otherwise they would be struck into charcoal. Lu Ping, who had already entered the attic, was actually hiding on the side. After seeing everyone learn a lesson, he released the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd from the core space. The Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd flew straight into the clouds, and a seven-colored lightning flashed in all directions. The lightning in the dark clouds was immediately suppressed. In fact, when Lu Ping entered the 8th floor, the flashing lightning in the sky caused a reaction from the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd in Lu Ping's core space. Lu Ping thought about the first 7 floors of the Buying Tower. Each floor had a different attribute of the world, and the last floor was a world of lightning. The Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd also had different attributes of the world as its foundation, and finally gave birth to the power of lightning. Could it be that the two were related? When Lu Ping entered the 8th floor, even though he hid himself, the lightning in the sky was still aimed at him. But at this moment, the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd in Lu Ping's core space shook. For some unknown reason, the lightning that was originally aimed at Lu Ping seemed to hesitate, and in the end, it didn't strike down on Lu Ping. After Lu Ping released the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd, the entire thundercloud was suppressed. Countless lightning flashed with the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd as the center, forming a 7-colored lightning net. The giant net withdrew, and the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd fell back into Lu Ping's hands. The dark clouds in the sky also disappeared, and DeBeo and the others let out a sigh of relief. Then, they saw Lu Ping standing not far away from them. Lu Ping reached out with his hand and drew out a bolt of lightning from the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd into the illusory world. The environment suddenly shattered like a mirror, and after everyone returned to the tower, they all looked at the wooden table in the center. This time, there were no heaven and earth spirit treasures floating on top of the wooden table. Instead, the wooden table was evenly divided into 7 colors, and each color was engraved with mysterious runes. Even with Lu Ping's spiritual force, he couldn't clearly distinguish these runes. On top of the wooden table, there was a small pavilion that looked exactly the same as the real 8 scenic restaurant in the center of the 7-colored wooden table. In this small tower, aside from the 4th and 7th floors that were dark, the other floors were emitting spirit light. This was especially true for the 8th floor, which was flashing with traces of lightning. From time to time, lightning would come out of this small buying tower. Lu Ping knew that this small pavilion was probably the core of the large mystic treasure. So, he stepped forward and slammed his palm on the roof of the pavilion. A thick layer of bluish-purple true essence instantly covered the entire pavilion's surface. At the same time, the true essence seeped into the interior of the pavilion. Then, Lu Ping's quintessential essence filled the entire first floor of the pavilion. The golden light on the first floor suddenly grew brighter, followed by the 2nd and 3rd floors, which also emitted a rich green and blue light. The 4th floor didn't have a fire attribute spirit object to suppress it, so Lu Ping's true essence refinement was especially fast. The tower only emitted a faint red light. The 5th and 6th floors were a little slower. Obviously, it was because the quality of the spirit objects was relatively higher. However, in front of Lu Ping's vigorous true essence, they didn't last long. After refining the 7th floor, Lu Ping's true essence filled the first 7 floors of the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd. He originally thought it would be the most difficult to refine the 8th floor, but after filling the first 7 floors with true essence, his true essence entered the 8th floor without any hindrance. This surprised Lu Ping. If someone was in the Yingtian dojo at this time, they would be able to see that as Lu Ping refined the small buying tower on the 8th floor, the entire buying tower was also shining brightly with the improvement of Lu Ping's refining level. Just after Lu Ping refined the 8th floor, the small tower on the wooden table suddenly shone brightly, and then disappeared from the wooden table. Everyone looked at Lu Ping, but they saw that Lu Ping's face was calm, and there was no change in him because of the disappearance of the small tower. Just after the small buying tower on the wooden table disappeared, the entire huge buying tower suddenly shook. Lu Ping said to everyone, "I have refined the buying tower. We will go out soon." In the Ingtian dojo, the buying tower first shook, and then the entire tower actually rose into the air. Then, it began to slowly shrink. At this time, a few brilliances suddenly emerged from the 8th floor of the tower. The brilliance landed on the ground, and Lu Ping and the others appeared from the escape light. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the shrinking Buying Tower. At this time, the Buying Tower had shrunk to 8 inches high, and it fell into Lu Ping's palm, occupying exactly the center of his palm. Debao and the others congratulated Lu Ping on obtaining the treasure. After refining the Buying Tower, Lu Ping already had some understanding of the Buying Tower's functions, and he was very happy. Lu Ping pondered for a moment. Although the Buying Tower was of great help to improve his personal strength, the greatest value of this spirit-nurturing treasure was actually as the foundation for the growth of a sect. The real thing that could maximize the Buying Tower's value was still Zhenling. Lu Ping summoned a spirit fire from the storage treasure. This earth middle-grade spirit fire was forcibly seized by Samling from the overflowing river sect's alchemy master, Kai Zhenfeng. Along with it, he had also seized a high-grade alchemy furnace. Lu Ping placed the spirit fire directly into the 4th floor of the tower. It was originally a fire attribute environment. Without the suppression of the spirit fire, it could only transform into a hot desert at most. However, after Lu Ping placed the earth-ranked mid-grade spirit fire into the 4th floor, the entire 4th floor suddenly shone with a dazzling red light. Then, the red light gradually faded away, but the originally dark 4th floor also shone brightly. Lu Ping turned to Lu Ling and asked, "Ling, do you still have an earth middle-grade ice spirit item?" Lu Ling very reluctantly handed over a earth middle-grade ice spirit item to Lu Ping. This spirit item was the double earth middle-grade ice spirit item that Lu Ping had obtained when he killed Ao Wushuang in the deep-sea demon territory. This kind of spirit item was suitable for Lu Ling to refine when she advanced to the mid-core forging realm. Therefore, Lu Ping gave both spirit items to Lu Ling for safekeeping. However, when Lu Ling advanced to the mid-core forging realm, she could at most refine a earth middle-grade ice spirit item. Even so, Lu Ling still reluctantly handed over the other earth middle-grade ice spirit item to Lu Ping. When Lu Ping saw Lu Ling pouting her small mouth, he laughed and received the spirit item. Then, he directly placed it into the 7th floor of the tower. A silver-white cold mist rose from the 7th floor, and suddenly, a light flashed. After Lu Ping placed the ice spirit item, except for the 8th floor, every floor of the tower had a heaven and earth spirit item as a cornerstone. The aura of the entire 8 landscapes tower changed. Lu Ping could clearly feel that the 8 landscapes tower's power had undergone a qualitative change. The 8 landscapes tower's power was mainly reflected in 3 aspects. The first was the quality of the spirit-nurturing treasure itself. The second was whether or not there was a heaven and earth spirit item as a cornerstone. Finally, it depended on the grade of the heaven and earth spirit item. At this time, the 8 landscapes tower already had the first 2 aspects. The third aspect was undoubtedly a function that tested the owner's wealth. Lu Ping did not intend to use all of his wealth to upgrade the 8 landscapes tower. After all, the 8 landscapes tower would be open to all cultivators in Zhenling in the future. Right now, it was only for his own use. Therefore, he first used his own spirit items to fill up the 7th floor. Once he returned to Zhenling, he would certainly need to extort some high-grade spirit items from Lao Zhu. Chapter 640. Above the altar at the source of the surplus river, the spatial door opened once again. Lu Ping and Debao walked out from the door. Then, the spatial door closed again, and the gray jar reappeared. Lu Ping took it out from the groove. Debao was still unwilling to give up. He asked, "Boss, are we not going to try the other forbidden areas? Even if we can't open them, don't you still have a 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman?" Lu Ping said unhappily, "The 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman is only used to break the 2 forbidden areas. Isn't that a huge waste?" Debao cried out, "There are still 3 areas covered by the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman. The treasures there are definitely more important than the ones covered by the 2 forbidden areas." Lu Ping couldn't be bothered with this money grubber. He turned into a streak of light and flew towards the mountain range. Behind him, Debeo immediately became anxious. He said, "Hey boss, wait for me. Where are you going? That direction isn't leading back to the cave." Lu Ping wasn't in a hurry. A moment later, Debeo caught up from behind. Looking at the direction Lu Ping was heading in, Debeo whispered, "Boss, are you going to take a look at that secret realm?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "We've already been here for 13 or 14 days. According to the speed of the Laozu of the northern sea sects, unless there were some delays along the way, the Laozu of the various sects would probably be here soon." Lu Ping paused for a moment, then continued, "According to the Du clan, the Yingtian sect's secret realm is very likely to be a Grotto Heaven treasure. With my current strength, if I forcefully take a Grotto Heaven treasure, I can barely take one below the spirit cultivation rank. However, it will definitely cause a huge commotion and attract the attention of the Ying He, Ying Shan, and Dao Space sects Fa Xiang Laozu. Thus, my original plan was to wait for Martial Uncle Jiang to come and take it. This way, we will definitely be able to avoid the Laozu's eyes and ears." Looking at the slightly disappointed Debeo, Lu Ping continued, "However, according to the Du clan, that Yingtian sect's secret realm is very likely to be a Grotto Heaven treasure. Based on my current strength, if I were to forcefully take a Grotto Heaven treasure, a spirit cultivation rank or below would be barely enough. However, when the time comes, I will definitely cause a huge commotion and be discovered by the Ying He, Ying Shan, and Dao Space sects Fa Xiang Laozu. Thus, my original plan was to wait for Martial Uncle Jiang to arrive and have him take it. This way, we will definitely be able to avoid the Laozu's eyes and ears from the various sections." Hearing Lu Ping's words, Debeo's spirits were immediately lifted. That's right. Right now, that secret space is still ownerless. Naturally, we can do whatever we want with it. As Lu Ping flew, he would often use a spell to leave a few mysterious imprints in a few special corners. These imprints would be imprinted on the trees, on the surface of the rocks, or even on the ground. Lu Ping would even make a few hand seals on the surface of the river and send the imprints into the flowing river, disappearing without a trace. Debeo asked curiously, "Boss, what are you doing? Why can't I sense the imprints you send into the rocks or the trees at all?" While flying, Lu Ping sent another imprint into a cloud. Then, he turned his head and said to Debeo with a smile, "These hand seals are Zhenling's secret communication imprints. Apart from high-level cultivators of Zhenling's direct lineage, it is extremely difficult for ordinary people to discover them. Even if they discover them, they won't be able to understand the meaning behind these imprints." Debeo understood something and said, "Boss, are you contacting Jiang Tianlin, Laozu, and the others?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "Naturally, the sooner I can contact them, the better. Maybe cultivators from other sects have already arrived. I have to inform Martial Uncle Tianlin of the situation in the Yingtian dojo as soon as possible so that the other martial uncles and martial uncles can prepare in advance. This way, we can gain the upper hand in the competition with the other sections." The two of them followed the direction that the Du clan had pointed out and flew all the way to the northeast of the mountain range. After traveling more than 500 kilometers into the mountain range, Debeo suddenly pointed to the front and said, "Boss, do you think that's the direction that the Du clan mentioned?" Lu Ping looked up and saw a silver-white waterfall hanging down from the mountainside. Although it was still more than 5 kilometers away, the rumbling sounds could already be faintly heard. The two of them descended in front of this huge waterfall. The deafening sound of the water was like the Milky Way descending from the ninth heaven, making it impossible for people to clearly hear other people's words when they looked at it from up close. However, this naturally didn't affect the conversation between Lu Ping and Debeo. Debeo looked at the deep pool of water in front of the waterfall and said, "This waterfall can be considered as an exceptionally beautiful scenery in this mountain range. I don't believe that no one has discovered this place before. How could no one have carefully examined the pool of water?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "This is indeed a place that attracts people's attention. However, it is also because of this that many people believe that the Yingtian sect wouldn't set up their secret realm here. Moreover, this secret realm of the Yingtian sect is quite different from the others, so it managed to deceive countless cultivators over the past thousands of years. DeBeo asked curiously, what's different about it? How did the Du clan discover this secret realm? Lu Ping chuckled and said, come with me to the mystic realm and take a look. You'll understand soon enough. Without waiting for DeBeo to speak, Lu Ping had already jumped into the pool of water. DeBeo wailed and said, no way, boss. We still have to enter the water? However, in the end, DeBeo still couldn't resist the temptation of the secret realm's treasures. He gritted his teeth and jumped into the pool of water. After entering the pool of water, DeBeo immediately saw that Lu Ping was currently holding the jade watermoon pearl above his head. Lu Ping was smiling as he clumsily moved through the water. DeBeo didn't care about anything else and struggled to enter the protective barrier of the jade watermoon pearl. He didn't care about the sorry state of his body and asked Lu Ping, boss, where's the secret realm? Lu Ping smiled and said, actually, we have already entered the secret realm. Now? DeBeo looked around in surprise, but discovered that it was still clear water all around. When he looked up, he could even see the huge silver waterfall falling from the sky through the clear and crystalline surface of the pool. Boss, I feel that we are still in the pool of water and haven't entered the secret realm? Lu Ping looked at the confused DeBeo and laughed lightly, saying, follow me. After saying that, Lu Ping lifted DeBeo's collar and rushed towards the surface of the pool of water above their heads. Although DeBeo was confused, he knew that Lu Ping definitely wouldn't do such a senseless thing. Sure enough, just as the two of them were about to rush out of the water, a green light suddenly flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. Then, as if he had seen something, he stretched out an arm and stirred it upwards. Immediately, a whirlpool was formed that rushed towards the surface of the water. Lu Ping and DeBeo plunged into the whirlpool. In a quiet valley, there was a small lake with a mirror-like surface. At the center of the small lake's surface, a whirlpool suddenly appeared. Then, two streaks of light suddenly flew out from the whirlpool. The streaks of light landed by the side of the lake, revealing a 20-year-old cultivator and a slightly short but extremely fat youth with a handlebar mustache. DeBeo looked at the reflection in the lake. It wasn't the surrounding valley, but the silvery white waterfall. He couldn't help but reveal an incredulous expression. After a while, he turned to Lu Ping, who was also examining the surroundings, and said, boss, is this the secret realm of Ingtian sect? This is really strange. Why didn't we come out from the pool of water under the waterfall? Lu Ping ignored DeBeo's question. He had already been completely attracted by the spirit herbs growing all over the mountains and plains of this secret realm. Could it be that the Ingtian sect had really used a secret realm as a cultivation base for spirit herbs? Lu Ping's body slowly rose up and looked into the distance. He saw that the top of the mountain in the distance was emitting rays of light that shot into the sky. At this time, DeBeo had also noticed the strange phenomenon at the top of the mountain in the distance. He immediately said with joy, boss, let's go there quickly. That must be an important place in this secret realm. Although Lu Ping's body was floating in midair, he could sense that this secret realm also had a flight restriction. Although he could float in midair, he couldn't fly towards the top of the mountain in the distance. With no other choice, the two of them could only rely on walking towards the top of the mountain in the distance. Fortunately, the two of them were able to walk as if they were flying. Their speed was even faster than a normal person running at full speed. However, when Lu Ping looked at the spirit herbs that covered the mountains and plains, there were many spirit herbs and spirit trees that were blooming with spirit flowers. Lu Ping released the amethyst wasp queen Zilan from the golden house. Accompanying her was her colony of over 10,000 amethyst wasps. Zilan looked at the blossoming spirit flowers in this secret realm and immediately cheered. She rode her 1-meter-tall puppet horse and galloped happily towards the wilderness. At the same time, countless amethyst wasps also scattered into this secret realm with a buzzing sound that gradually faded into the distance. Along the way, when Lu Ping saw the mature 3,000-year-old spirit herbs, he couldn't help but stop to collect them. Then, he buried the seeds of the mature spirit herbs back into the ground. With great difficulty, he finally reached the top of the mountain under DeBeo's urging. By then, Lu Ping had already collected over 103,000-year-old spirit herbs. Many of them were rare spiritual herbs that were extremely rare in the world of cultivation. At the top of the mountain was a huge palace. DeBeo's face was filled with hope as he asked, "Boss, what do you think? Is it possible to break the restriction here?" Lu Ping sighed. His hands formed several hand seals in succession and shot towards the palace in front of him. Like flowing water, a swaying restriction barrier suddenly appeared in front of the palace. On the surface of the barrier, a total of 28 colored lights constantly flowed, emitting a psychedelic light. 4 rainbow-colored restrictions? DeBeo stared at the barrier in front of him, dumbfounded. Then, he became dejected. The 4 colored restrictions were not something they could break, unless... Chapter 641. How could Lu Ping not understand DeBeo's meaning when he saw that DeBeo was suddenly looking at him with bright eyes? So he didn't even think about it and said, "Don't even think about using the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman. Not to mention whether or not we can open it after using it. Even if we do open the barrier here, if we don't quickly subdue it, this Heaven's Cave will definitely lose the support of the illusion from before and will soon be discovered by others. And if I subdue this Heaven's Cave, it will inevitably cause a strong tremor in the entire Heaven's Cave. At that time, I will still be discovered, so we can only wait for Marshal Uncle Jiang to arrive." Lu Ping looked at DeBeo's dejected face and said with a smile, "However, other than this palace, this Heaven's Cave is not without treasures. You call yourself the treasure-seeking mouse. Have you not discovered anything?" DeBeo listlessly looked at the spirit herbs growing around him and said, "Even if there are some precious spirit herbs, there are only 1 or 2 of them. What else can I discover? Moreover, although the spirit herbs in this Heaven's Cave are growing everywhere, the quality of the spirit herbs themselves is not very high. It is obvious that they have been growing on their own for thousands of years without anyone taking care of them. If that Luanyu was still here, this would be a place he would like to live." When Lu Ping heard DeBeo mention Luanyu, he couldn't help but be startled. He didn't know how Luanyu had been following Yin Wujiu and Laozu all these years, and whether or not he had found the inheritance of the Wood Luan clan. However, this thought only flashed in Lu Ping's mind for a moment. Then, Lu Ping pointed at a few trees growing at the foot of the back mountain and said to DeBeo, "Do you recognize those trees at the foot of the mountain?" Looking from afar, DeBeo couldn't clearly distinguish the dozen or so trees of different sizes. Lu Ping chuckled and walked towards the dozen or so trees at the foot of the mountain, and DeBeo hurriedly followed. Just when the two were only 300 feet away from the trees, the dozen or so trees suddenly began to sway without any wind. The swaying of the branches produced a whistling sound, as if it had turned into invisible sound waves in the sky, falling towards the heads of Lu Ping and DeBeo. Lu Ping seemed to have been prepared, and with a slight vibration of his enormous divine sense, he shattered the sound waves that were aimed at him. DeBeo didn't have Lu Ping's enormous divine sense and was also caught off guard. His eyes immediately rolled upwards, and he was about to fall towards the ground with his back to the sky. Lu Ping shook his head slightly and kicked DeBeo's butt. DeBeo, who was about to fall backwards, immediately pounced forward. Just as he was about to fall flat on his face, his brain quivered, and he immediately became clear-headed. His body staggered a few steps forward, and only then did he manage to stand up with difficulty. Looking at the dozen or so seemingly ordinary trees in front of him, DeBeo asked Lu Ping beside him with lingering fear, "Boss, what kind of spiritual tree is this? Why is it so powerful? Could it be that it has cultivated into a spiritual demon like the little peach tree and gained intelligence?" Lu Ping fiercely knocked DeBeo's head and said, "It's already extremely rare for a spiritual demon to appear in this cultivation world. Did you think that we would encounter a dozen or so spiritual demon trees here?" DeBeo knew that he had made a mistake of common sense and immediately laughed foolishly and said, "Boss, what exactly is this spiritual tree? Please tell me." Lu Ping didn't answer immediately and instead walked a little closer to the dozen or so spiritual trees. DeBeo followed behind Lu Ping with some suspicion and instantly smelled a familiar fragrance. DeBeo's eyes widened, and he said, Why? Why is this so similar to the calming soul incense that you lit the other day, boss? But it's just that the density is a little lighter. Lu Ping nodded and said, that's right. These dozen or so spiritual trees are the famous frightening soul trees in the cultivation world. This kind of frightening soul tree is very sensitive to the approach of life. Once a cultivator or demon beast approaches, it will automatically form a frightening soul sound hoop and cause the cultivator's divine sense to be imprisoned, and they will fall unconscious. DeBeo looked at the dozen or so spiritual trees in front of him in astonishment and said, no way, boss. This is the famous frightening soul tree in the cultivation world? This is the most important ingredient to make the three famous incenses of the cultivation world. Soul calming incense, and soul nourishing incense? Lu Ping smiled and said, what? You didn't think of this, did you? These three types of soul incense are famous in the cultivation world, but very few people know that they actually come from the same source. Although each type of soul incense is refined from a variety of different materials, the main material is the frightening soul tree. The main material of the soul-stabilizing incense is the branch of the frightening soul tree. The main material of the soul-calming incense is the trunk of the frightening soul tree, and the most precious soul-nourishing incense is the root of the frightening soul tree. When DeBeo heard what Lu Ping said, his eyes lit up as he looked at the dozen or so frightening soul trees. He drooled and murmured to himself, boss, there are a dozen or so frightening soul trees here, and the youngest one is probably over 1,000 years old. If all of them are used to make the three types of incense, how much wealth would it be? Lu Ping stretched out his foot and made to kick again. This time, DeBeo was smart. He quickly took a step forward and avoided Lu Ping's kick. Lu Ping said in a bad mood, if all of them are cut down to make the incense, how many benefits will you get? If these frightening soul trees can be successfully cultivated, won't the benefits be endless? DeBeo immediately flattered Lu Ping, patted his chest and said, boss is really wise. I, DeBeo, can't think of such an idea. If boss can make the incense, I, DeBeo, will help you sell it. What do you think, boss? Lu Ping glanced at him and said, how many incense do you think we can make? Even if we can make enough incense to satisfy our needs, we can only sell the rest through secret channels. That way, we won't attract the attention of the cultivation world and get the most benefits. DeBeo wanted to say something, but Lu Ping grabbed his collar and said, all right. Don't you want to make use of the incense in the future? Now, help me move these spirit trees into the golden house. Be careful not to break even a single root. Otherwise, these frightening spirit trees will be damaged, and the quality of the soul incense refined in the future will be greatly reduced. DeBeo's expression darkened, but now that he had advanced to the early core forging stage, his strength had improved significantly compared to when he was in the blood condensation stage. He no longer needed to help Lu Ping move something into the golden house. Every time he helped move something into the golden house, he would often faint due to the exhaustion of his magic power. However, the huge roots of these towering trees carried a huge amount of soil, and it was difficult for DeBeo to bear. After throwing DeBeo, who was exhausted and limp on the ground beside a dozen huge pits, Lu Ping walked towards the other parts of the grotto heaven. He wanted to make the best use of his time and selectively collect the rare spirit herbs in this grotto heaven. Under the guidance of the amethyst bees, who were collecting the nectar of the spirit herbs, Lu Ping found 3 top-grade spirit tea trees in a place with dense spiritual energy. These 3 spirit tea trees were around 5,000 years old, and the spirit tea they collected contained dense spiritual energy. It was far more beneficial to cultivators' cultivation than ordinary top-grade spirit tea. Lu Ping loved tea, and he was extremely picky about the quality of the spirit tea. Every year, he would spend hundreds of thousands of spirit stones on top-grade spirit tea. Lu Ping had also tried to cultivate top-grade spirit tea in the Golden House, but it would take hundreds of years of painstaking cultivation to succeed. Moreover, high-quality top-grade spirit tea seeds that could catch Lu Ping's attention were extremely hard to come by. The discovery of these 3 5,000-year-old spirit tea trees made Lu Ping overjoyed. These 3 spirit tea trees could only produce around 30 taels of top-grade spirit tea in a year, But the enormous spiritual energy contained in these 5,000-year-old spirit tea trees made these 30 taels of top-grade spirit tea as valuable as 30 pieces of soul-nourishing incense. The amethyst queen bee, Zilon, was very busy in the grotto heaven, commanding the huge swarm of bees to speed up the gathering of spirit nectar. She knew that this was a rare opportunity. She didn't know how many years it would be before she would be able to find an entire grotto heaven to cultivate spirit herbs again. If Zilon wanted to advance in her cultivation, the most important thing was not only the accumulation of long-term cultivation, but also the essence of hundreds of flowers that Zilon absorbed during the process of brewing the amethyst royal jelly. Previously, in the secret land of the perished archipelago, Zilon successfully broke through to the core forging stage because of the sea of spirit herbs there. However, the Longhua ancestor had already made it clear that unless there was a large spirit herb garden that had been accumulated for thousands of years for Zilon to command the amethyst queen bees to collect flower nectar in a short period of time, Zilon would no longer have any hope of advancing in her cultivation. The Longhua ancestors' words greatly disappointed Zilon. However, after Zilon had used the Sea of Flowers in the secret land of the perished archipelago to push her cultivation to the peak of the first layer of the core forging stage, then Lu Ping told Zilon that the Jinling sect's Laozu had already agreed to let her collect all of the spirit herbs in the sect's garden. Only then did Zilon see the hope of advancing in her cultivation. However, she didn't expect that this time, Lu Ping would directly find a grotto heaven in the secret land of the Yingtian sect that was specially used to cultivate spirit herbs. Although this grotto heaven had already lost the management of cultivators, the entire grotto heaven was growing in a disorderly state. However, this grotto heaven was rich in spiritual energy and had not been disturbed for thousands of years. The growth of the spirit herbs inside was abnormally dense. Nearly a third of the spirit herbs had reached a medicinal age of more than 1,000 years. After Lu Ping carefully moved a dozen frightening spirit trees and 3 5,000-year-old top-grade spirit tea trees into the House of Gold, another day had already passed. Zilon commanded the swarm of bees and returned to the hive of the House of Gold with an exceptionally happy harvest. Before entering the House of Gold, Zilon excitedly told Lu Ping that she was preparing to go into seclusion. This was because she felt that the nectar that she had collected in the grotto heaven contained the essence of 100 flowers. It was enough for her to successfully advance to the second layer of the core forging stage. Debeo reluctantly returned to the valley where the small lake was located. When he saw that Debeo still couldn't help but look back at the vast field of spirit herbs in the secret land, Lu Ping kicked Debeo into the lake. After Lu Ping jumped into the lake and met up with Debeo, he didn't stir the lake this time. Instead, he floated straight up. Debeo heard the deafening roar of the waterfall coming closer and closer. When the two of them jumped out of the water again, they had already landed in front of the pool. Debeo looked at Lu Ping and asked, "Boss, where are we going now?" Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Let's go back to the cave first." The two of them carefully set up a layer of light. Lu Ping wrapped the multicolored cloud-light robe around the layer of light, and the two of them disappeared into the clouds that filled the sky. This time, Lu Ping didn't seem to be in a hurry. Debeo asked, "Boss, today is the 15th day. Laozu and the late core forging stage cultivators from the various sects in the North Sea should have arrived by now. However, we still haven't found Jiang Tianlin and Laozu. What do you think we should do?" Lu Ping seemed to be flying casually, but in fact, his divine sense had been probing the Jinling's inheritance imprints scattered in various areas along the way. When he heard this, he smiled and said, "You forgot that we also know where the Yingtian dojo is. When the time comes, we can just go and find it." Debeo didn't think much of it. When Laozu from the various sects started to open the Yingtian dojo, they would most likely use violent means. At that time, in order to prevent outsiders from spying on them, they would definitely set up a formation to cover and protect the heaven and earth anomaly caused by the opening of the Yingtian dojo. At the same time, they would also send people to patrol the surroundings of the dojo to prevent other cultivators from accidentally entering and discovering the schemes of the various sects in the North Sea. At that time, before Lu Ping could sneak in, he would probably be killed by Laozu from some sects with ulterior motives. Just as Debao was about to say something, he saw that Lu Ping's expression suddenly became joyful. The Jinling's inheritance imprint that he had set up in one of the clouds had already been left with a similar imprint. The information contained in these imprints could only be understood by the true core elite cultivators of the Jinling sect. After Lu Ping used his divine sense to check the imprint, he waved his hand to disperse the clouds and change the direction of the conveyance light, flying in the opposite direction of the Yinghe Valley. After a few dozen kilometers, Lu Ping passed by the skies above a forest. He suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed at a giant tree beneath his feet. A ball of spiritual light exploded from the surface of a leaf on the top of the giant tree. Lu Ping's divine sense quickly scanned every spirit star before the exploded spiritual light dissipated. Thus, he raised his head to determine the direction and quickly disappeared into the sky once again. Under a cliff, Lu Ping's conveyance light had just landed when he was already enveloped by a vigorous wave of divine sense. At this time, Lu Ping's own divine sense was no longer weaker than that of an ordinary early Dharma adept. However, when this wave of divine sense approached him, a feeling of inferiority welled up in Lu Ping's heart. However, Lu Ping did not panic because the other party's divine sense far exceeded his own. This was because he was very familiar with this wave of divine sense. It was the leader of the second generation of Jinling sect disciples, and could be said to be the true number one person among the second-generation disciples in the entire North Sea cultivation world. It was his teacher's partner, Zhang Tianlin Laozu. After pacing around the cliff for a while, Lu Ping finally saw the path that perfected Xianxin had used a row of cobblestones to guide him. Following the direction of the cobblestones, Lu Ping had just bypassed the obstruction of the formation when he heard Zhang Tianlin Laozu's chuckling voice. I was just guessing that it was one of the disciples from our sect who had been traveling in the Central Plains. It was as if he had already known that our sect would come to the North Ice Plains and had left his legacy marks everywhere in advance. So it was you, kid. From the looks of it, the marks you left seem to have been left 1 or 2 days ago. Tell me, how did you get to the North Ice Plains before us? Lu Ping raised his head and saw 5 people sitting together. The leader was Zhang Tianlin Laozu, while the other 4 were perfected Xuanxu, perfected Xianxin, perfected Xianxin, and perfected Xuanju. Before he could answer Zhang Tianlin Laozu's question, Lu Ping was first shocked by perfected Xuanju's pale face. This was obviously a sign that he had suffered an extremely serious injury. Chapter 642. In fact, when Lu Ping found this hidden cliff, he had already discovered the intricate array that enveloped the bottom of the cliff. He could also clearly sense that Zhang Tianlin Laozu's divine telekinesis had also discovered him. However, even though Zhang Tianlin Laozu's divine telekinesis had discovered Lu Ping first, it did not bring him into the array. Lu Ping thought about it and understood Zhang Tianlin Laozu's intention. This was to test him on his method of breaking the array. Lu Ping's divine telekinesis instantly covered the entire array. Then, his eyes shone with green light as he carefully examined every detail of the array. However, to Lu Ping's disappointment, although he could clearly see the trajectory of the array, he could not break it without damaging the foundation of the array. Lu Ping thought about it and was about to use Failing Sect's secret forbidden technique when his heart suddenly stopped. Lu Ping had never used this Failing Sect's secret forbidden technique in front of others. The array in front of him was obviously created by the sect's newly promoted array grandmaster, perfected Xianxin. Then, could this not be Tianlin Laozu's idea, but perfected Xianxin himself asking to test Lu Ping? With enlightened Master Xianxin's knowledge and foresight, as long as Lu Ping used Failing Sect's secret forbidden breaking technique, he would be able to break the array formation in front of him. On the other hand, enlightened Master Xianxin's secret technique would also be easily seen through. If it was during normal times, Lu Ping could take this opportunity to pass down this secret technique in Jinling through his teacher. It could also be used to strengthen the position of Zhonghua's lineage in Jinling. However, this inherited secret technique was related to an important secret cultivation plan for Lu Ping in the future, and it could not be known to others yet. In all fairness, even though Lu Ping's divine sense and 3 pure one's true pupils couldn't completely crack the intricate array formation, it was still possible for him to shatter the array formation with the combination of his skills and spells. But obviously, he couldn't do that right now. In desperation, Lu Ping could only make a helpless expression and quietly wait for the sect senior to bring him into the array. After entering the array along the path that Perfected Xianxin had used the cobblestone to point out, Perfected Xianxin did not ask Lu Ping about the array. Although Lu Ping was surprised, his attention was quickly attracted by the heavily injured Daoist Xianxin. Daoist Xuanxin's face was pale and haggard. It was obvious that he had suffered serious internal injuries. However, after hearing Tianlin Laozu's question, Lu Ping had no choice but to answer first. This disciple has long yearned for the cultivation world of the Central Plains. After the incident on Frost Island, this disciple had wanted to follow Senior Uncle to the northern ice plains to search for Yingtian Dojo. However, Senior Uncle Laozu did not allow it. After that, this disciple coincidentally found a super long-distance teleportation formation in Laozu's cave abode that year. This disciple was overjoyed and activated the teleportation formation, but I did not expect to be teleported here. Lu Ping's words were a mixture of truth and lies, and there were many loopholes. However, Zhang Tianlin, Laozu, and the others did not care about this. What they cared about was that Lu Ping was able to clearly inform the sect about this teleportation formation. As for whether or not Lu Ping had reported the teleportation formation after discovering it, in the eyes of Jinling's and Laozu's eyes, it was not important. After all, the teleportation formation was discovered by Lu Ping. It was only natural that he had profited from this teleportation formation. As long as Lu Ping was able to report this matter to Laozu's at a later time, how much he had profited previously was up to his own ability. A secret teleportation formation that connected the North Sea to the border between the Central Plains and the Northern Ice Plains. Although it was a small teleportation formation that could only be used by one person, it was enough to make Zhang Tianlin, Laozu, and the others go wild with joy. The cultivation world of the North Sea and the Central Plains had been isolated for many years. One only needed to know that the disciples of the North Sea could only travel to the Central Plains through the teleportation formations of the East Sea. Furthermore, due to the limited number of spots, only the elite disciples of the late core forging realm were qualified to obtain a spot. Now that there really was a teleportation formation that connected the North Sea to the Central Plains, the significance of this to the rising Jinling was self-evident. Zhang Tianlin, Laozu, and the other four perfected masters looked at each other, and they could all see the hidden joy in each other's eyes. However, Zhang Tianlin, Laozu, was the best at maintaining his composure, and he quickly hid his emotions. At the same time, he also guessed the truth of many things through Lu Ping's narration. He smiled and said, "In that case, Qingjian Laozu should also have a cave abode on this side of the teleportation formation." It seems that Qingjian Laozu is not as simple as he seems. Furthermore, from the information revealed by the Blue Sea sect, not only is Qingjian Laozu really the successor of the Yingtian sect, but it is also very likely that he knows the true location of the Yingtian dojo. Lu Ping couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. Zhang Tianlin, Laozu, had always had a carefree and unrestrained image in the sect. However, the intelligence and wisdom that he displayed at this moment made Lu Ping admire him from the bottom of his heart. These Dharma manifestation Laozu, after hundreds of years of cultivation, had been influenced by the deceit of the cultivation world. Which one of them was easy to get along with? Perfected Master Xianxin pondered for a moment and said, "Senior brother, what you mean is that the Yingtian dojo might have already been taken by someone else?" Hearing Perfected Master Xianxin's words, the three perfected masters Xiansu, Xianju, and Xianchun could not help but look a little disappointed. Zhang Tianlin, Laozu, laughed and said, "That's not very possible. The Yingtian dojo is a large and powerful sect in the cultivation world. There are many experts in the sect, and they are even stronger than the Feiling sect. Qingjian, Laozu, is only an early Dharma adept. Moreover, from the situation when he was being chased by the Songhai sect, his strength is not that great. With such strength, even if he is the successor of the Yingtian dojo, How many of the high-level prohibitions in the Ying Tian dojo can he break? Zhang Tianlin. Lao Tzu's words made the three Zenrins heave a sigh of relief. Even perfected Master Xian Xin nodded his head in agreement. Lu Ping admired Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu's guess, very much. The truth was just as he had guessed. In the Ying Tian dojo, Qingjian, Lao Tzu, had only broken some areas that were covered by 1 or 2 prohibitions, and there was only one area that was covered by 3 prohibitions. Although Lu Ping admired Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu's guess and deduction, he still didn't expect that Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu, had guessed more than this. Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu, looked at Lu Ping, who had a pensive look on his face, and asked with a smile, "The things that Qingjian, Lao Tzu, obtained from the Ying Tian dojo back then must have been stored in the cave abode that you teleported from. Do you have anything that you don't need to give to the sect?" Lu Ping knew that Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu, was reminding him that the biggest taboo in the cultivation world was not to worry about scarcity, but to worry about inequality. Even though these things were obtained by Lu Ping, and even if he didn't use a single thing, no one would say anything, he was still dissatisfied with Lu Ping. This would not be beneficial to Lu Ping's growth in the sect in the future. However, after Lu Ping told everyone about the teleportation array, he was already prepared. After Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu, mentioned it, Lu Ping wiped his storage ring, and 3 thick ancient books appeared in his hand. Lu Ping carefully placed the 3 ancient books in front of Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu. When everyone saw how solemn Lu Ping was, they were very surprised to see the contents of these 3 ancient books. However, at this time, Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu, looked at the 3 ancient books in front of him with a solemn expression. He carefully took the 3 ancient books, opened one of them very gently, and read the contents. After a long time, spiritual master Zhang Tianlin had roughly browsed through the 3 ancient books. Only then did he put the 3 ancient books back together with satisfaction. He sighed and said, "With these 3 ancient books in hand, even if this trip to the Ying Tian dojo is fruitless, it will be worth it." Spiritual master Xian Su, who was at the side, said in surprise, "Senior brother Zhang, what are these 3 ancient books? Are they really so precious?" Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu, laughed. Seeing that the other 3 were also curious, he explained, "In the cultivation world, other than the Yuan family, which has received the legacy of Peng Lao Tzu, it is said that when the 7th patriarch preached and taught disciples, he passed down a total of 49 paths to the true spirit, corresponding to the 7 attributes and the 7 main bloodlines. Therefore, when measuring the strength of a sect, a very important standard is to see how many complete ancient books they have from the blood condensation realm to the late Dharma realm." At this time, spiritual master Xian Qin also asked in surprise, "Senior brother, could it be that junior nephew Lu's 3 ancient books are actually 3 complete ancient books that have been passed down?" Zhang Tianlin, Lao Tzu, smiled and nodded. He said, "Yes, one is called the 4-season cycle technique, which is the most suitable technique for cultivators with the wood attribute Luan bloodline. The other is called the virtuous turtle breathing technique, which is the most suitable technique for cultivators with the water attribute turtle bloodline. The third technique is called the frost cicada technique, which is the most suitable technique for cultivators with the ice attribute cicada bloodline." After Zhang Tianlin finished introducing the 3 techniques, the other 4 spiritual masters were overjoyed. It must be known that Zhenling had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, and there were many techniques passed down within the sect. However, there were only 6 complete techniques that could be practiced to the late Dharma stage. Apart from Zhenling's 5 true inheritances, only spiritual master Liang Xianfeng had found the Linhai wave listening technique in the Zhong Xian cave abode, which had been passed down to the late Dharma stage for Lu Tianling and Lao Tzu. However, now that he had obtained 3 of them, the complete inheritance of Zhenling's techniques had suddenly increased to 8. It must be known that these 3 techniques were passed down by the Ying Tian sect, so there was no doubt about the authenticity of these techniques. Otherwise, they would definitely not have been kept in the Ying Tian sect's last and most important inheritance hall. How could this not cause everyone present to be inexplicably excited? The breadth and completeness of a sect's inheritance not only meant that the inheritance was widely accepted by the public, but at the same time, It also meant that more and more talented cultivators could continuously emerge because of the complete inheritance. This was the root of the rise and prosperity of a sect. Chapter 643. Of course, these were not the only things that Lu Ping had gained from the Clearstream cave abode. Zhang Tianlin, Lao Zu, and the others were naturally aware of this as well. However, these three complete cultivation manuals had undoubtedly greatly strengthened their weakest shortcoming for the rising Zhenling. Seeing that the seniors had calmed down from the joy of obtaining these three cultivation manuals, Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Martial uncles and martial uncles, this disciple still has some news regarding the Ying Tian dojo to report. I'm going to ask you even if you don't say it." Zhang Tianlin, Lao Zu, smiled and said, "You were able to obtain the Clearstream cave abode, and Clearstream Lao Zu had obviously entered the Ying Tian dojo before. Then, he must have some information regarding the Ying Tian dojo." This time, Zhang Tianlin, Lao Zu, did not guess correctly. However, he would never have thought that Lu Ping had already entered the Ying Tian dojo twice. Lu Ping chuckled and said, "This disciple has already found the Ying Tian dojo and entered it twice. Today, when this disciple discovered the inheritance imprint left behind by the martial uncles and martial uncles, I had just come out of the Ying Tian dojo." "What?" This time, the spiritual masters of Zhenling finally cried out in surprise. Even Zhang Tianlin, Lao Zu, looked at Lu Ping in surprise. Spiritual Master Xianchen asked again in disbelief, "You really found the Ying Tian dojo and entered it twice?" Lu Ping smiled and took out the grayish clay pot mystic treasure. Then, he told the seniors about how he found the Ying Tian dojo. Lu Ping smiled bitterly and helplessly as he looked at the gazes the seniors were giving him. Then, he said, "Martial uncles and martial uncles, this is what it looks like. In the entire Ying Tian dojo, the areas covered by the seals are distributed in a concentric circle pattern. The outermost area is covered by 3 7-colored seals, while the rest is covered by 2 5-colored seals." It was only then that the crowd regained their senses from Lu Ping's narration. Then, they looked at enlightened Master Xian Chun, Zhenling sect's only grandmaster in array formations. Other than Lu Ping, no one else was more qualified to speak than her. Spiritual Master Xian Chun pondered for a moment and said, "I heard that you fought to a draw with Blue Sea sect's Zhangxi outside of Frost Island?" Lu Ping scratched his head. Although he didn't know why Spiritual Master Xian Chun would ask about Frost Island, he still answered, "That time. This disciple borrowed the profound ice formation that martial uncle laid down." Spiritual Master Xian Chun did not seem satisfied with Lu Ping's answer and continued to ask, "If you had a fair fight with him, what would the outcome be?" Lu Ping saw that Spiritual Master Xian Chun was asking in detail, as if the importance of this matter was no less than breaking the rainbow restrictions in Ying Tian dojo. Lu Ping pondered for a moment and said carefully, "If that Zhang Shi did not hide too much of his strength that day, disciple is confident that even if I was not his match, I would still be able to tangle with him. At the very least, it would not be a problem for me to escape unscathed." Lu Ping naturally held back when he said this. Among his trump cards, at least the 7 Thunder Treasures Calabash and the Great Gentian Formation had not been exposed. Moreover, during these days, Lu Ping had obtained 3 spirit-nurturing great artifacts and his strength had increased. If he fought with Zhang Shi again, the outcome was still uncertain. Even so, when everyone heard Lu Ping personally confirm it, their faces showed more or less surprise. Zhang Shi was an expert who had condensed a gold core, while Lu Ping was only a 3rd-generation disciple who had just advanced to the late core forging stage. After a flash of surprise passed through Spiritual Master Xian Chen's face, he began to calm down, as if he was calculating something. The surrounding spiritual masters, including Zhang Tianlin and Lao Zu, did not make a sound to disturb him. This time, although Zhenling was led by Zhang Tianlin, there was no doubt that the commander would be Spiritual Master Xian Chun, the Formation Grandmaster. Unfortunately, Zhenling also had an expert who was famous for breaking restrictions, Spiritual Master Liang Xianfeng. He was currently in seclusion and was at the most critical moment of breaking through to the transcendent stage. Otherwise, Jinling's lineup in Tian Dojo would be even stronger. After about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, spiritual master Xian Chun finally let out a long sigh of relief. Beside him, Jiang Tianlin and Lao Zu said with a smile, "Junior sister, you have a result. This time, what strategy should we adopt to gain the upper hand in the competition with Lao Zu?" Spiritual master Xian Chun nodded at Jiang Tianlin and Lao Zu, but he did not answer first. Instead, he turned to Lu Ping and asked again, "Do you know why I did not lead you into the formation immediately?" Lu Ping thought to himself that it was indeed spiritual master Xian Chen's idea to stop him outside the formation. However, he still replied with a bitter smile, "It seems that Uncle Master wanted to test me. However, I have disappointed Uncle Master. Uncle Master's formation is mysterious, and I cannot break it." Spiritual master Xian Chun nodded. Just as he was about to say something, spiritual master Xian Chun said, "Let me explain." Lu Ping looked at spiritual master Xian Chun with some surprise, only to see that spiritual master Xian Chun had a regretful expression on his face. He said, "Martial nephew Lu is now the third alchemy grandmaster of our sect. I believe that you have already seen that I, Uncle Master Lu, am seriously injured. I am afraid that I can only use 20 to 30% of my strength. I am no longer able to participate in the Tian Dojo. Previously, I was still feeling a little regretful that there was one less person participating in the opening of the Tian Dojo. Now that martial nephew Lu has arrived, and with martial nephew Lu's strength, which is originally above mine, I believe that our sect will gain more from the Tian Dojo." Just as Lu Ping was about to speak, he saw that spiritual master Xian Chun had a regretful expression on his face. However, he still took out a jade box from the storage magic tool on his waist and passed it to Jiang Tianlin Lao Zu. He said, "From what martial nephew Lu said, every restriction in the Tian Dojo is at least 7-colored. In that case, only restriction-breaking talismans of 3 colors and above will have some effect on the restriction-breaking talismans. In this box are the restriction-breaking talismans of 3 colors and above that Master and I created. Among them, there are 6 3-colored talismans, 3 4-colored talismans, and only 2 5-colored talismans made by Master. Senior Brother Jiang, please use them carefully and bring back the greatest harvest for our sect." Jiang Tianlin Lao Zu sighed inwardly. He took the jade box from spiritual master Xian Chen's hands and said, "Junior sister, please be at ease." Spiritual master Xian Chun was the #1 talisman crafting genius in Zhenling. Currently, he was second only to Tian Shui Lao Zu in Zhenling. This was also the main reason why spiritual master Xian Chun was able to become Tian Shui Lao Zu's disciple and become the vice pavilion master of the talisman crafting pavilion. Otherwise, with spiritual master Xian Chen's ordinary talent, without Tian Shui Lao Zu's care, her cultivation would at most stop at the middle stage of the core forging realm. How could she have reached the 8th layer of the core forging realm? She even wanted to take a peek at the transcendence realm. Originally, Tian Shui Lao Zu had helped spiritual master Xian Chen obtain a spot to participate in the opening of the Tian Dojo. She hoped that spiritual master Xian Chen would be able to find some opportunities in the dojo. However, no matter how much she thought about it, she never expected that spiritual master Xian Chun would be heavily injured after arriving in Middle-earth. In order to not affect the competition between Zhenling and the other sects, she could only hand over the opportunity to Lu Ping. At this moment, Lu Ping finally found an opportunity to ask, "How did martial uncle Xian Chun get injured? Did he consume a healing pill? Is there any way this disciple can help?" After advancing to the mid-Dharma stage, a practitioner's lifespan could even extend up to 1,200 years, and late Dharma adepts could even reach 1,500 years. Zhenling had a legacy of tens of thousands of years. Although it had not grown into a large sect in the past, the legacy of Dharma adepts had never been cut off. So why was it that there was no Dharma adept of the earlier generation above Celestial Lao Zu was still alive? Originally, Lu Ping suspected that the Dharma adepts of Zhenling, who were even older than the first generation of practitioners, might be living in seclusion somewhere. However, as Lu Ping's cultivation and status increased, he also knew more about Jinling's secrets. He also knew that there were indeed no older practitioners above Celestial Laozu. After that, Lu Ping had asked his teacher, Lu Tianling, about this question. Only then did he know that there were 6 Dharma adepts in the previous generation of practitioners, including Celestial Laozu, and 2 of them were mid-Dharma adepts. It was just that later on, when the great calamity of the cultivation world spread to the North Sea, those 6 Laozu protected Jinling against the attack of the Shura clan. For Laozu died in battle, and the remaining 2 Laozu's lifespan was also greatly reduced after the calamity. Jinling's legacy was at its most dangerous moment. Fortunately, at that time, the calamity had just ended, and the various sects in the North Sea had suffered heavy losses. Everyone was licking their wounds and recuperating, so Jinling managed to get through this most difficult period. After barely managing to cultivate 4 Dharma adepts, namely Tian Xiang, Tian Shui, Tian Fan, and Tian Kong, these 2 older generation Jinling Laozus fell one after another, and Jinling finally achieved the Dharma adept's legacy. After that, the 2 Laozus, Tian Jiang and Tian Xiang, also advanced to the Dharma stage. Jinling's strength also recovered to the strength before the calamity, but Xinling's sect was not able to recover as quickly as Jinling after the calamity, and gradually, the gap between them and Jinling was shortened. Although Lu Ping had fought with the Azura clan and killed many Azuras, he knew that the Azuras he met were only the weakest of the Azura clan. They were minor repairs Azuras that had not yet fully matured. A fully matured Azura would have the strength of a late core forging cultivator, and the great Azuras of the Azura clan were all existences that could rival Dharma adepts. Looking at Lu Ping's shocked expression, Jiang Tianlin Laozu explained, Songyu sect is the destination of the East Sea's Purple Talisman Pavilion's ultra-long-distance teleporter. This time, it was directly attacked by the Azura clan and the Xioma clan. Although they were repelled, Songyu sect suffered heavy losses this time. At that time, we had just teleported to Songyu sect when we saw the battle between the 2 sides. We had no choice but to help Songyu sect. Your uncle Shinju was ambushed by an Azura at that time and was severely injured. Lu Ping's expression was solemn as he nodded and said, Uncle Shinju, have you taken any healing elixirs? Shinju Zhenren smiled bitterly and said, I've already taken the Bell Cauldron pill refined by Master Fornax. This time, Master Fornax prepared a Bell Cauldron pill for each of us just in case. I didn't expect that I would waste this healing pill before even entering Ingtian Dojo. The Zhongding pill was a healing elixir that Tianlin Laozu had relied on to become a Grandmaster Alchemist. Although the difficulty of refining this elixir was only at the level of a half-step Dharma adept, its effects were even effective on Dharma adepts. The only downside was that the spirit herbs needed to refine this elixir were extremely precious, even more precious than the spirit herbs needed to refine normal Dharma adepts. At this time, Jiang Tianlin Laozu said, Your uncle Shinju's injuries were quite serious. At that time, it was life-threatening. Although she used a Zhongding pill to alleviate her injuries, I'm afraid that she will need several years to recover. We originally wanted to give our Zhongding pills to her, but she thought that this trip to the central region was fraught with danger, so she refused to take our Zhongding pills. Just as Xuanju Taoist master was about to say something, Ancestor Jiang Tianlin raised his hand and stopped him. But this time, there's always a way out. I didn't expect you to be one step ahead of us. With an alchemy grandmaster like you here, I think your uncle Xuanju Taoist master won't have to worry about our Bell Cauldron pill. I heard from your uncle Yang Xianfeng that you were able to refine the Bell Cauldron pill when you were just at the early stage of the core forging realm. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's words were said to Lu Ping, but in fact, it was also said to Shinju Zhenren. At this time, Shinju Zhenren said, Although nephew Lu has become an alchemist grandmaster, the spirit herbs used to refine a Zhongding pill are too precious. Nephew Lu may not have all the precious spirit herbs needed to refine the Zhongding pill. After taking a Zhongding pill, my life is no longer in danger. All I need is a few more years to recuperate. Senior brothers and junior sisters, you should keep the Zhongding pills for yourself in case you need them. Moreover, this time, I was seriously injured. My cultivation foundation has been shaken, and there is almost no hope of advancing to the Dharma stage. What's the difference between recovering 2 years later and earlier? At this time, Lu Ping had basically understood the cause of the matter. The biggest reason why Xin Zhuzhenren refused to take the Zhongding pill was because he had no hope of advancing to the Dharma stage. Lu Ping thought about it and took out an ancient book from his storage ring. This ancient book was made of the same material as the previous 3 complete ancient books, but there were many missing parts in this ancient book. It was obviously incomplete. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Lu Ping handed the incomplete ancient book to Xin Zhuzhenren, who had a suspicious look on his face. He said, "Uncle, take a look at this ancient book first." Xin Zhuzhenren did not know what Lu Ping was up to, so he opened the incomplete ancient book in his hand and began to browse. When Taoist Xian Zhu flipped to the first page of the remnant book, he was stunned for a moment before his expression turned serious. However, as he flipped through the remnant book, his expression first became one of exuberance, then ecstasy. Soon after, his expression became solemn. It was obvious that he was deeply attracted by the contents of the remnant book. After a long time, Xin Zhuzhenren flipped to the last page of the incomplete ancient book. Then, as if remembering something, he raised his head and looked at Lu Ping, who had a relaxed smile on his face. Then, he smiled apologetically at the others and said, "To me, this incomplete ancient book is 100 times more precious than the 3 complete cultivation methods." Seeing the puzzled expressions on everyone's faces, Xian Zhuzhenren asked Lu Ping, "This ancient book is also from the Yingtian dojo?" Lu Ping nodded solemnly and said, "Uncle, this ancient book is not complete. I think there are other parts in the dojo. If you can collect them all, even if your cultivation foundation is damaged, there is still hope for you to advance to the Dharma stage." Xian Zhuzhenren touched the incomplete ancient book in his hand and said with emotion, "I don't just need the other parts. Just this half of the incomplete ancient book can make up for a huge flaw in my cultivation." Xian Zhuzhenren asked curiously, "Senior sister, what kind of ancient book is it that you value it so much?" Xian Zhuzhenren nodded at Lu Ping, then handed the ancient book in his hand to Jiang Tianlin Laozu, who was beside him, and said, "This half of the ancient book is related to the creation and cultivation of talismans in the Yingtian dojo sect. I am a talisman cultivator like the Purple Talisman Pavilion, but my sect's inheritance is not complete. Furthermore, I don't have teacher Tian Shui's talent to make up for the flaws in my cultivation method. Originally, there was not much hope for me to advance to the Dharma stage. However, this half of the ancient book can help me make up for many of the flaws in my cultivation. It will be very beneficial for my future cultivation." Seeing everyone's joyful faces, Xian Zhuzhenren finally smiled. She continued, "However, this is not the only important thing. In this half of the ancient book, there is a complete inheritance of a type of precious talisman. This inheritance may not be complete even in some large sections." This time, it was Xian Zhuzhenren who could not hold back his curiosity. He hurriedly asked, "What inheritance is it?" Before Xian Zhuzhenren could speak, Jiang Tianlin, who was flipping through the half of the ancient book, gasped and said, "It is actually the complete inheritance of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman." Xian Zhuzhenren opened his mouth wide and said, "What? Restriction-breaking talisman? Or the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu closed the ancient book in his hand and said to Lu Ping, "I want to bring this half of the original ancient book along with the 3 complete cultivation books back to the sect. If you need it, you can make a copy of it first." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Disciple originally wanted to hand these ancient books over to the sect. I have already made a copy of it." Jiang Tianlin Laozu was obviously satisfied with Lu Ping's attitude. He said, "Martial nephew Lu, this is only a small harvest from the Yingtian dojo. It seems that the harvest from the Yingtian dojo this time is really worth looking forward to." Everyone smiled and nodded. Lu Ping could see the hidden excitement in their eyes. Jiang Tianlin Laozu handed a jade bottle to Xian Zhuzhenren and said, "Junior martial sister, you won't reject this bell cauldron pill this time, right?" Xian Zhuzhenren was still hesitating when Lu Ping said, "Martial uncle, with your current injuries, it is best for you to take another bell cauldron pill. Not only will it greatly shorten the recovery time, but it will also minimize the possibility of your injuries affecting your cultivation foundation. As for the Bell Cauldron pill, you don't have to worry. Disciple has collected a lot of spiritual herbs and can start refining them immediately. Moreover, Disciple has another matter to report. It is about a huge spiritual herb garden in a secret realm of the Ying-Tian sect. However, this time, only Martial Uncle Jiang can do it. Xin Zhuzhenren's eyes lit up when he heard Lu Ping's words. Zhang Tianlin Laozu had already handed over the Bell Cauldron pill to Lu Ping. Then, he smiled and asked, "Oh, there is a secret realm of the Ying-Tian sect in the Ying-Tian mountain range? Do I have to do it? Tell me, what kind of good news have you brought us?" Chapter 644. Lu Ping was about to tell Zhang Tianlin Laozu about the secret realm he discovered in the waterfall pool, but Zhang Tianlin Laozu seemed to have sensed something and reached out to stop Lu Ping. Lu Ping sensed that Zhang Tianlin Laozu's divine will was probing outside the array, so he quickly stopped talking. At the same time, he also sent out his own divine will, but to no avail. Just as Lu Ping was puzzled, a few rays of light suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's divine will. Lu Ping suddenly realized that his divine will might be comparable to that of ordinary Dharma adepts, but compared to Zhang Tianlin Laozu, who was at the early Dharma stage, there was still a huge gap. Zhang Tianlin Laozu glanced at Lu Ping, then smiled at the people beside him and said, "We have guests. Let's go out and greet them." At this time, Perfected Master Xin Sen's expression also changed. Clearly, he had also noticed the arrival of the rays of light. Immediately after, Perfected Master Xin Su also noticed something, but Perfected Master Xin Shan and Perfected Master Xin Ju were the last to notice. Zhang Tianlin Laozu nodded at Perfected Master Xin Chan. Perfected Master Xin Chan waved his sleeve, and the array at the bottom of the cliff suddenly opened. A hearty laugh came from afar. "Martial Nephew Jiang, you are so fast. Saming and I have just arrived." Zhang Tianlin Laozu looked at the rays of light descending from the sky. After the rays of light dissipated, four cultivators walked out. The two in front were the Jade Sword sect's Tong Jin Laozu and the Chongming sect Saming Laozu, whom Lu Ping had met on Frost Island. The two behind them were at the 9th level of the core forging realm. Obviously, they were the late core forging realm cultivators from the two sects who were participating in the Yingtian dojo. Zhang Tianlin Laozu smiled and said, "Seniors, you are not late." Then, he turned to the two late-stage core forging cultivators behind Laozu and smiled. "Brother Hua, Brother Ziyang, how are you?" These two late core forging realm cultivators were obviously familiar with Zhang Tianlin and the others. After exchanging greetings for a while, Zhang Tianlin and Laozu led them into the array formation. Tong Jin Laozu looked at the 5 late core forging cultivators behind Zhang Tianlin and Laozu. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Martial Nephew Jiang, this time, your sect will be the leader of our 2 sections. However, we agreed that your sect can only have 4 late core forging cultivators. How come there are 5 now?" Zhang Tianlin Laozu saw that the 3 Laozu had also noticed this, but Tong Jin Laozu was straightforward and said it first. Ancestor Zhang Tianlin sighed and said, "The 2 of you have also come from the Middle Earth, so you must have some understanding of the situation in the Middle Earth." Just this alone was enough to make the 2 Laozu turn pale with fright at first, but then they were overjoyed. After sending off the 2 Laozu, Zhang Tianlin Laozu then turned to Lu Ping and said, "It seems that the situation is more complicated than we thought. Once the matter of the Yingtian dojo is over, I am afraid that we will have to return to the North Sea as soon as possible. We will have to use that teleportation portal of yours." Lu Ping nodded, indicating that he understood. After diving directly into Laozu's rocky cave abode from the Yinghe River, Perfected Xin Su and the others were astonished by the ingenuity of the cave abode's construction. Du Shi, who had recovered from her injuries, brought along the somewhat confused Du Jialua and carried the little fox demon, who still seemed to be on the verge of death. Her heart raced as she watched Lu Ping and the others enter one after another. The aura that these people exuded made her feel extremely terrified. She could sense that even if she had encountered these people at her peak, she would most likely have fled in defeat before she had possessed the body. That middle-aged scholar, who had a suave figure and had glanced at her, could probably kill her with just a wave of his hand. After Jiang Tianlin Laozu entered the cave abode, he inadvertently glanced at Du Shi and frowned slightly. He said to Lu Ping, "Possession by a demonic cultivator?" Lu Ping did not expect Jiang Tianlin Laozu to discover Du Shi's secret so easily. However, he did not appear too surprised. These things would have to be reported to the sect sooner or later, so he said, "Yes." At this time, Perfected Xin Su and the others also heard the conversation between Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Lu Ping. They all looked at Du Shi strangely. Possession was widely known in the cultivation world, but they were more or less surprised to see a successful cultivator, and a demonic cultivator at that. However, compared to Du Shi, who had possessed the body of a demonic cultivator, Jiang Tianlin Laozu's interest was quickly attracted by Du Jialua, who was standing beside Du Shi. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's gaze was a little strange. He looked at Lu Ping beside him and said, "You picked this kid up? What are your plans?" Lu Ping was now much more immune to Jiang Tianlin Laozu's ability to easily see through many of Lu Ping's thoughts and secrets. Hearing this, he only said, "Prepare to activate the blood meridian ceremony, then we will see." "Oh." Jiang Tianlin Laozu nodded in relief and said, "That's for the best. If the blood meridian ceremony is successful, even if his talent is not too good, as long as he is willing to work hard, with his physical body, he should be able to break through to the Dharma stage." Looking at Jiang Tianlin Laozu's relieved expression, Lu Ping felt a little strange in his heart. Was this Uncle Master afraid that he would refine Du Jialua into a human core? This thought flashed in Lu Ping's mind. Immediately after, he heard Jiang Tianlin Laozu's slightly curious voice ask, "Kid, are you thinking of accepting a disciple?" Lu Ping was startled and said, "Whether this kid can activate the blood meridian or not is another matter. I only plan to recommend him to our sect after the blood meridian ceremony is successfully activated. However, if he wants to be my disciple, it will depend on his ability." At this time, Master Xin San sighed and said, "Now that a large number of our sect's third-generation disciples have advanced to the core forging stage, they have the qualifications to accept disciples. Among the second-generation disciples, there are very few who accept disciples anymore. However, as the undisputed number one disciple of the third generation, you, Celestial Water, have always been unwilling to accept disciples. This has already caused many seniors in the sect who are concerned about the inheritance of the sect to be dissatisfied. Many of our sect's disciples have also been complaining that the requirements for you to accept disciples are too high. If it wasn't for Senior Sister Tianling who has been blocking this matter, I'm afraid you would have been annoyed to death by them." Lu Ping was stunned for a moment and said, "There's actually such a thing? I didn't know about it." Jiang Tianlin Laozu said, "It doesn't matter. It's normal for the requirements to be high. The key is whether you are willing or not. Your master and I are not afraid that you will accept disciples late, but that you will not accept disciples at all. After all, you have only cultivated for 100 years. There is still a long road ahead of you. It's better to accept disciples later and have more time to cultivate. However, if you don't accept disciples now, even if you leave behind an inheritance, it will not be as good as you teaching your disciples step by step. This way, the essence of your inheritance will be better inherited." After settling all the seniors of the sect in the cave residence, Master Xin Ju had already started to recuperate from his injuries in seclusion. At the same time, he began to study the incomplete talisman crafting manual in his hands. Master Xin Su and Master Xin San, on the other hand, were recuperating and preparing to find the Ingtian dojo tomorrow after meeting up with the other sections. However, the actual location of the Ingtian dojo was already known by Lu Ping. When the time came, everyone would just be putting on a show. The most important thing was to be able to obtain as many valuable inheritances after entering the Ingtian dojo. On the other hand, enlightened Master Xian Shan filled his room with all kinds of instruments and mystic instruments that Lu Ping recognized and didn't recognize. Among them, Lu Ping had seen many of them at Hu Lily's place before. They were obviously important tools that enlightened Master Xin Chun was using to decipher the seals. After settling everyone, Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin Laozu left the cave residence again. Lu Ping threw the cloud-light five elements robe, and a cloud that was exactly the same as the white cloud in the sky slowly rose. Then, it merged with the white cloud floating in the sky and disappeared. Chapter 645. After Lu Ping told Jiang Tianlin Laozu about the secret realm of Yingtian sect that he had discovered and deduced that the secret realm was most likely a paradise artifact of Yingtian sect, Jiang Tianlin Laozu had originally planned to take some time out to investigate this secret realm after the Yingtian dojo was completely opened. However, after Lu Ping told Jiang Tianlin Laozu about the news that he had discovered a medium-sized spirit stone mine in the Yingtian dojo, Jiang Tianlin Laozu could no longer remain calm no matter how much effort he had put into maintaining his composure. After Lu Ping had settled Jinling and the others in the cave dwelling, he urged Lu Ping to bring him to the direction of the waterfall as soon as possible. Lu Ping had a direct understanding of the significance of a medium-sized spirit stone mine after the battle on Frost Island. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had never imagined that Lu Ping would be so lucky as to find another mine. Unfortunately, the location of the mine meant that Jinling would not be able to concentrate a large amount of manpower here to mine. Therefore, there was only one way left, and that was to move this medium-sized spirit stone mine as a whole. The biggest reason why the medium-sized spirit stone mine on Frost Island could not be moved was because it was too far away from Jinling, and the traction formation had consumed a lot of energy. Even if they could barely move it, the earth would shake and the mountains would shake during the process of moving it, making it impossible for this spirit stone mine to be kept secret. If the spirit stone mine in the Yingtian dojo was moved outside of the dojo, it would definitely cause a huge commotion and attract the attention of the three sects in the Yingtian mountain range. At the same time, it would also attract the attention of the cultivators of the North Sea sects who had already snuck into the mountain range. Moreover, moving the spirit stone mine outside of the dojo would not be able to guarantee its safety. Therefore, there was only one way to move the spirit stone mine, and that was to draw the spirit stone mine into another space, just like how he had drawn the spirit stone mine into the space of Yingtian dojo. In other words, this space had to be a spatial artifact. In other words, it had to be a paradise artifact. This way, Lu Ping's House of Gold would naturally be useless, and Jiang Tianlin Laozu had to retrieve the spatial artifact in the pool under the waterfall. Jiang Tianlin Laozu followed Lu Ping and landed in front of the pool under the waterfall. Even though he had already learned about the wonders of the secret realm hidden in the pool from Lu Ping, when Jiang Tianlin Laozu was unable to find any clues about the secret realm on the surface of the pool, he still revealed an expression of shock. According to Lu Ping's instructions, Jiang Tianlin Laozu pushed towards the pool, and a huge pit that seemed to reach the bottom of the pool immediately appeared on the surface of the pool. The pool water formed a flight of stairs that led straight to the bottom of the pool. Jiang Tianlin Laozu stepped on the stairs formed by the flowing water and walked to the bottom of the pool. Then, the huge pit immediately closed up, and the pool returned to its original calm state. Lu Ping stood on the shore beside the pool. After the pool returned to its original state, he still stood there calmly and waited quietly. After about half an hour, Lu Ping suddenly realized that although the waterfall that was rushing down from the cliff was still making a loud roar, there was no longer a huge splash after the waterfall fell into the pool. The entire pool suddenly became strangely calm like a mirror. Lu Ping's expression changed. He saw a figure suddenly break out of the calm pool, but there was not a single drop of water on him. It was as if the surface of the pool was just a broken illusion. After Jiang Tianlin Laozu came out of the pool, he floated above the pool. Lu Ping could tell from his rather serious expression that it would not be easy to recover this spatial magic treasure. At this moment, Lu Ping saw Jiang Tianlin Laozu raise his hands, and the originally calm surface of the pool suddenly shook again. Every time Jiang Tianlin Laozu raised his hands, it seemed that he had to put in a lot of effort. However, his hands were still firmly raised. As his hands moved, the surface of the water shook more and more violently. The water slapped against the shore, creating 3-foot-high waves and a loud sound. At this moment, Lu Ping could already see that there seemed to be something under the pool that was being pulled out by Jiang Tianlin Laozu's spell. The violent shaking of the pool had already spread to the shore. Lu Ping could feel the ground under his feet trembling more and more clearly, and he couldn't help but frown. He had expected that recovering this spatial magic treasure would cause a huge commotion, so he didn't do it himself. Instead, he let Jiang Tianlin Laozu do it. This was to minimize the commotion during the recovery process, so that it wouldn't be discovered by the various sects in the Yingtian mountain range and the North Sea sect Laozu. However, he still didn't expect that even if it was Jiang Tianlin Laozu, it would still cause such a huge commotion. As the ground shook more and more violently, a low but distant rumbling sound gradually came from the ground. Jiang Tianlin Laozu also seemed to realize that something was wrong. If this continued, it would definitely attract the attention of others. At this time, the Yingtian mountain range could be considered a gathering of experts. Including Laozu from the Yinghe sect and the other two sects, there were at least 13 Dharma adepts gathered here. Once someone discovered the commotion here, they would definitely try to snatch it. At that time, the ownership of this spatial magic treasure would be uncertain. At this moment, Lu Ping saw that Jiang Tianlin Laozu's hand was still in the air, but his other hand was hitting his chest. A clear chirp suddenly sounded, and a giant bird suddenly appeared in the air behind Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Its beautiful feathers brought with them rays of spirit light in the sky. Lu Ping was very familiar with the image of this giant bird. It was 80% to 90% similar to the true form of the wooden phoenix that Luan Yu had revealed before she had transformed. This giant bird was obviously the Dharma power that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had formed after he had advanced to the Dharma stage. The giant bird raised its head to the sky and chirped. Following Jiang Tianlin Laozu's finger, it circled elegantly in the sky and dived into the surging pool. With the help of the Dharma power, waves instantly surged in the pool. Because of the strong shaking of the surrounding mountains, many rocks fell from the mountains. Lu Ping knew that this was not good. He saw a wave come from the pool, and a giant bronze mirror that was the same size as the pool slowly rose from the water. Lu Ping could even see a giant wooden phoenix flying in the mirror. When Jiang Tianlin Laozu saw the bronze mirror rise from the pool, his expression immediately relaxed. However, he did not dare to delay at all. He continuously made a few hand seals, and waves of green essential essence were injected into the giant bronze mirror. As the bronze mirror rose, its size continued to shrink. When the bronze mirror rose to the height where Jiang Tianlin Laozu was floating in the air, the grotto heaven treasure that contained a space shrank to the size of a palm. Jiang Tianlin Laozu held it in his hand. Lu Ping was overjoyed, and his body also floated into the air. Just as he was about to congratulate Jiang Tianlin Laozu for receiving a grotto heaven treasure, he saw Jiang Tianlin Laozu look behind him with a serious expression and say, "Let's go." Lu Ping's expression changed, and he did not have time to say anything. A small boat appeared under his feet, and he quickly disappeared into the horizon. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the direction that Laozu Jiang Tianlin had turned to look at. "May I ask which fellow has come to the Yingtian mountain range?" "Old man, I'm from the Yinghe sect. Yinghe sect. Can you stop and have a chat?" Lu Ping had already used the multicolored cloud-like clothes to cover the boat. The light that Lu Ping had left behind could no longer be seen in the sky, but it was still very difficult to hide from Dharma idol Laozu, who had already been discovered. Jiang Tianlin Laozu stood on the boat, still holding the bronze mirror in his hand. However, at this moment, he was clearly at a critical juncture in his control of the grotto heaven treasure. All his attention was focused on the bronze mirror in his hand. Helpless, Lu Ping could only use all his strength to escape. He did not hope to escape from Long River Laozu, but he hoped that he would not be able to catch up to him in an instant. That way, he could buy time for Jiang Tianlin Laozu to refine the bronze mirror. In the sky above the sparkling pool, a fair-skinned cultivator in his 50s suddenly appeared. He looked at the pool under his feet with a complicated expression. This person was Long River Laozu of the Yinghe sect. The Yingtian mountain range had been explored countless times by the cultivators of the Yinghe sect in the thousands of years since the Yinghe sect had been destroyed. Even he himself had explored the Yingtian mountain range many times, hoping to find some of the mystic realms that the Yinghe sect had hidden in the mountain range. This waterfall pool was one of the most scenic spots in the Yingtian mountain range. Almost every cultivator from the Yinghe sect had come here to admire this waterfall that seemed to fall from the 9 heavens. However, a treasure of the Yinghe sect was hidden in the pool under this waterfall. Over the thousands of years, countless cultivators had not discovered the abnormality in the pool. Although Long River Laozu was curious as to what kind of treasure it was and how it could fool the countless cultivators who came and went, the person who had collected the treasure was obviously a Dharma adept. Furthermore, it seemed that the process of collecting the treasure was not easy. Naturally, this treasure was not to be underestimated. How could Long River Laozu be satisfied with this? For thousands of years, the Yinghe sect and the other 2 sects had relied on the scattered inheritances left behind by the Yinghe sect to develop to their current scale. In the minds of Long River Laozu and the others, they were the true inheritors of the Yinghe sect's inheritance. Therefore, all the treasures left behind by the Yinghe sect in the Yingtian mountain range should naturally belong to the 3 sections. The person just now was obviously not from any of the 3 sections. That meant that he was a foreign cultivator. This foreign cultivator had obtained the treasures left behind by the Yinghe sect. From Long River Laozu's point of view, this was equivalent to stealing the treasures of the Yinghe sect. How could Long River Laozu swallow this insult? The person who had stolen the treasure was obviously of similar cultivation level to him. Long River Laozu did not have the confidence that he could win. After thinking about it, Long River Laozu could only reluctantly create 2 voids in front of him. Then, he placed 2 talismans into them and disappeared. However, from the looks of it, the person seemed to be refining the treasure and had no time to think about escaping. He was only being carried by a late core forging cultivator. This was a good opportunity to stop him. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.